message is being broadcast by the Department of Defense of the Republic. At 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, multiple unidentified objects were confirmed to have entered Earth's atmosphere.
Discovery Houston, 20 seconds to LOS T-drift.
Contact, nice, clear in orbit. The first message that comes to you is you are a divine being. You matter. You count. You come from realms of unimaginable power and light, and you will return to those realms.
The vast stretches of the unknown and the unanswered and the unfinished still far outstrip our collective comprehension.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting from Forest Tower Studios, all the way from the Deep South. Now, here is your host, Joe Root.
Broadcasting from a shack on a hill in the mossy creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. This is Lighting the Void. I hope you guys had a great weekend. I am Joe Roop, your host tonight, and welcome to, well, we're in the harvest, but also welcome to fall. The first day of fall is here, and our guest tonight, author and award-winning filmmaker Richard Martini, author of FlipSide, a tourist guide on how to navigate the afterlife. Very, very compelling to me. I am so stoked about this because you guys know that I bring up Isaac Newton's book quite a lot. Michael Newton's book quite a lot, Journey of Souls. And I don't know how this happened. It's actually free on YouTube, and I don't know how long that's going to stay there. But if you want a taste of the book, just go check it out there. And that was one of the first books I actually read before I read Robert Monroe's Journeys Out of the Body. So I was interested in, not just what happens after we die, but in between lives, all that stuff, what goes on. And that was really a good book to get into. And now Richard Martini is here with us tonight. Real quick, before we get into the interview, I got to give a good shout out to our sponsors at GetTheTea.com. Mr. Ronnie McMullen, thank you so much for doing what you do. And go check out his YouTube channel, Health Matters Now, if you want the best advice. Keep guarded from those intruders. Keep yourself cleansed at GetTheTea.com. Also, AncientLifeOil.com. If you want the best CBD oil on the planet, that's where it is. You all know that, and you've all been getting it, and we really appreciate you for it. And I love your feedback, too, on that. So if you're a first-time user of this stuff and you've never tried the tea or you've never tried CBD oil, tell me how your experience went. I want to know. Also, preparewithafriends.com. A big shout out to our supporters. Thank you guys so much. And the UFO Seekers Season 4 has officially launched. I watched the first episode yesterday, and it was fantastic. It's on youtube.com/UFO Seekers. UFOseekers.com is their website. We back and support them. We love their work at UFO Seekers on Twitter. And if you had a sighting, just give them a call at 661-UFO-7889. Now, as I said earlier, author and award-winning filmmaker Richard Martini is with us, and he has written and or directed 9 indie films, a former freelance journalist for VarietyInc.com, Premiere, and other magazines, a graduate of the Masters of Professional Writing program at USC. FlipSide is a book that he wrote, A Tourist Guide to the Afterlife, as his debut nonfiction book on a topic that has been haunting him since the death of a soulmate. Now, after a dream vision of visiting his friend in the great beyond, Martini went on a literary quest to find out what the prevailing science and philosophical opinions on the afterlife are. He journeyed into Tibetan philosophy, made documentaries in Tibet and India, and eventually was introduced to the work of the Newton Institute, founded by renowned author and hypnotherapist Dr. Michael Newton, which wrote Journey of Souls. And you can check out the website at richardmartini.com. Richard, thank you so much for coming on the program. Good to have you.
Well, Joe, it's my honor to be here. It's really a treat to hear your voice. You got a wonderful voice, by the way. I'm sure you've heard that before.
I have heard it a lot, although I don't like my voice, but that's kind of given, right? Most people don't like their voices, and other people do.
Well, can I just say it was born for the radio? But let me just correct you on one thing. It's richmartini.com.
richmartini.com.
Actually, I think I might have bought richardmartini.com as well. Maybe it links there. I don't know. But Rich Martini. But yes. So I just want to say we were, just when we got introduced, I was saying I was down in Little Rock about, maybe 30 years ago before you were born, somewhere around there, where my first feature film was called Three for the Road. It starred Charlie Sheen and Alan Ruck, and we shot it in Little Rock. And I just loved being there. I just, I was really, the Deep South is just a wonderful place to visit.
Yeah,
can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. All right. It's a fine town.
It's a fine town.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and, then we had a president from there for some time. So there you go. But That was when you were a bit younger. But anyway, so let's talk a little bit about my journey so your audience knows who the heck it is you dragged on the show tonight. So basically, yes, Michael Newton was a hypnotherapist in Los Angeles back in the late 50s, early 60s. What's interesting about the guy was that he didn't believe in the afterlife. He was not a guy who an avowed skeptic. He said, I didn't believe in the afterlife. I didn't see people who wanted to talk about the afterlife. There was a famous case, a woman named Bridey Murphy, sort of was covered by all the big magazines back in the day. So people would call him up and say, well, I want to do a past life regression. And he'd say, I don't think it's worth it. It's a waste of time. And then somewhere in the early 60s, somebody came in who had shoulder pain. And this guy couldn't figure out the source of his pain, and a number of doctors, told him, there's nothing, we can't find anything in the x-rays, but you need to go and see either a psychiatrist or someone to hypnotize you. So we found Michael, who was a psychologist. He wasn't a psychologist per se, he was a hypnotherapist working in a psychology department at a university, as far as I can tell. Anyway, and what happened was this guy, so Michael said, take me to the source of your pain. And under hypnosis, this guy suddenly went to World War I. And he said he saw himself being stabbed by a German soldier. And that was the source of his pain. And Michael said this guy was writhing on the ground. But he didn't believe him. So he started grilling him with questions like, well, what was your unit? What's your mother's maiden name? What street did you grow up on? And ultimately, he sent that information off to the British War Office, and they said, indeed, that this guy had lived and died, gave him all the details of this guy. And the fellow who had the back pain called Michael the next day and said, you've cured me. My whole life I've had this problem. And Michael was thrown for that. But he allowed people to start doing past life regressions. And it was in the late 60s when a woman came in and complained of being super lonely and depressed. And Michael said that he thought it was just a case of depression. And under hypnosis, he said, take me to the source of your pain. And she said, oh, I see. I chose this lifetime. I'm in with my soul group right now. We're talking to all my friends. And I realize these are the people I normally incarnate with. And they're all showing me and reminding me that I agreed to sign up for this lonely lifetime on purpose. And Michael said, I don't understand. Is this a memory? Is this something that happened in the past? Is it something from the future? And she said, no, it's happening right now. I can see them in your office. And he said she pointed up to the ceiling, like as if they were there. And he said this event was something that startled him and kind of threw him. He said, he was a guy who didn't believe in past life regression. And suddenly this woman was saying that there's some kind of a between lives reality that we can access. And so basically he closed his public practice and for the next 30 years only saw people who could take him to that place. And he mapped out the journey. And in my case, as you mentioned, a close friend of mine passed away. 1996, my girlfriend. We had been together about 20 years. And she started showing up in dreams, but also in other ways. And I would hear her voice. And I had read Robert Monroe's book, Journey Out of Bodies. In fact, Luana Anders is her name. She and I had actually written a screenplay for an actor kind of based on that topic, somebody being outside their body. But here she was talking to me, and I was hearing her voice, but not as I knew her, but like as a younger version of her. And I thought to myself, okay, this is either I'm making this up or somehow she still exists. I mean, it's either one or the other. And so I was thinking to myself, well, where are you? I mean, if you can come and visit me as she was doing, then where have you gone? Where are you? And before she passed away, she said to me, I have this recurring dream. I'm in a classroom. She said it was in another universe. Everyone was dressed in white, and they were speaking a language she had never heard before, but somehow she completely understood in the course of this dream. So the night she passed away, a close friend of hers called me up and said, I had the greatest dream about Luana. She was in the fourth dimension, she said, in this classroom, and everyone in the class was dressed in white. And I thought, wow, that's so weird. And I mentioned it to the hospice nurse who had been taking care of her for months, and she nearly fainted and said that was her recurring dream. She told it to me like every day, that she was in this classroom with these people somewhere else. So ultimately, because she had been a Buddhist, I thought, well, maybe Buddhism has an answer. There's that book, the Tibetan Book of the Dead. I thought, maybe I'll, check into that. So I was in New York, in Manhattan. I started auditing classes with Robert Thurman. He's kind of famous for being Uma's father, but he also was the first Tibetan Buddhist monk ever ordained by the Dalai Lama. They're good pals. And anyway, I went with him to India. I went with him to Tibet, and I studied and learned and got into that world. But basically, it didn't match with what my experience was. Let's just put it that way. She was appearing to me. I was seeing her. And in sort of the Buddhist philosophy, it's in between lives, you're like a wisp of smoke. You're not like a person walking around, you see? So it was contrary to what my experience was. So I kind of kept looking. And then I stumbled upon Michael Newton's work in a very roundabout, odd, wonderful coincidence way. And in the first chapter, I picked up that book, Journey of Souls, the one you mentioned. There's a guy talking about being in a classroom in the afterlife where everyone's dressed in white. And I thought, well, wait a minute. That's exactly what she said. So I thought, well, wouldn't it be cool if I could make a documentary? I had already written and directed a bunch of feature films. And, today, a documentary, all you need is a camera and, and a microphone.
So wait a minute. You met Michael Newton, like, for real?
Well, no, dude, I shot his last interview.
Oh my God. That's so awesome.
So, yeah. Well, I go to this conference and I meet him, and he, checks me out and like, who are you? And I said, look, I'm just curious, and I'm a filmmaker, and I have the ability to put something together, and I think this will be interesting. My quid pro quo to them was, everything I shoot, I'll give to you. And if you guys want to use it for your conferences or whatever, please do. I thought that was fair, because I was going to film, their technique, what they do. So the very first day, and it's important to hear this in context. So I'm a jaded Hollywood guy. I've been out here for a long time. I've been making movies. I've seen it all, heard it all, whatever. But I'm there, and I've read Michael's book, and I can't help but think, oh, maybe they're directing people. Maybe this is some kind of fantasy. I don't know what this is. But now they've allowed me to come into their inner sanctum, and I'm going to film an actual demonstration. So Michael's standing off to the side. Paul Orand, who is at the time was the president of the Newton Institute, he was the hypnotherapist who conducted the session. The woman involved in this demonstration is a hypnotherapist from Sedona. She volunteered to do a demonstration. Now, I got to tell you, afterwards, I went up to her and said, hey, have you ever had this past life memory before? She was like, no. She was in tears. It was amazing. And so I turned my camera on. They introduced me. And she starts to remember, and I'm sure you're familiar because you've read the book, they go through the person's current life. What do you remember? What are the first things you remember? Let's go back. And then at some point they say, well, let's go to a previous lifetime that has some significance to this one. And she suddenly says, oh, I'm in a shower room, and there's showers. There's showers overhead, and everybody in the room is naked, and our heads have been shaved, and we're waiting for the showers to come on. And the hypnotherapist said, Paul says, like, where are we? And she says, we're in Auschwitz. And I, jaded Hollywood guy, thought to myself, oh, please, come on. I got my camera on. How convenient that she would go to the most dramatic. You see, that's how jaded I was. But I couldn't, I wasn't going to say it. I just going to film it. And so during the course of the way it works, Paul says, well, let's just freeze this moment. Let's go back to a happier time in this lifetime. And now she goes back to Warsaw. Her name is Anna Paczynski. I found her online. I found all the details that she talked about online. And she had a family, and she lost everybody. And there she was in Auschwitz after, horrific events. And ultimately she finds herself passing away and then lifting up out of her body and going home. That's what she said. She said, Paul Oren said, where do we go next? What happens? And she said, I'm going home. It's the first time I'd heard that. And I got to tell you, I've filmed 50 of these sessions since then. And pretty much everybody calls the afterlife home. If you think about that for a second, you and I can talk about home. What's home? We think of food, we think of love, we think of family, we think of friends. I couldn't believe she said that. And first I thought, does she mean like upstate New York, home? She wants to go home. Or did she mean Warsaw, this lifetime she just remembered? But no, she was talking about home, where we all go after our lifetimes are over. And in this moment, she goes back home and she's greeted by her guides and her teachers and everybody she lost, all of her family. They're all there to greet her. And so there's the tone changes. It's a happier moment. And by the way, this is all in my film FlipSide, and it's also in the book FlipSide. And so then at some point she goes to see her counsel, and she says to her counselors, why did I go through this difficult lifetime? I lost everything. I lost everyone I loved. And then she paused and said, oh, this is going to be very hard for me to express, but they're showing me these images. They're showing me that it was harder to choose to play the role of a perpetrator than a victim in this lifetime. Easily the most politically incorrect sentence I've ever heard in my life. My head shot up from the camera. What? What did I just hear her say? It was harder to choose to play the role of a perpetrator? And then she explained it. She said, we all choose roles in life, and the people who chose to play the bad guys had a much harder time of it because it will screw them up for many lifetimes. She said, in my case, every day in a camp was a lesson in love and a lesson in courage, an intense lesson, like a PhD course in forgiveness and whatever, in survival, and all these things that you can experience. I wouldn't want to, no thank you, but that's what she said. And since then, I've been filming these people, and they say this over and over and over again, where they'll say, oh, I was murdered. I was murdered in that lifetime. And then the hypnotherapist says, well, who murdered you? And then she says, oh, he's coming to me and saying, he's a captain of a ship, had murdered this shipmate. And she said, he's coming to me and saying, you have no idea how hard it was to do that to you because I've known you for so long. And many lifetimes. And then she recognized this captain of the ship who had shoved her off because they had run aground and she was stealing food from all the other shipmates, and they had voted her off. And she was saying, oh, I see now the captain is my father in this life. And he saved me from drowning when I was a little girl. Here she was, remembering being pushed off a ship and drowning at sea in 1888 on a German steamship. All I can say is I've been doing this now for 10 years, and people say this consistently. Now, that's about the journey that we choose on stage. And what you mentioned earlier, and it's important, once we get off stage and we go home, that's the place that Michael Newton called the between lives realm. That's where we go and we reconnect with our loved ones, our family, our friends, et cetera, and we plan our next journey with our guides and teachers. They come to us and say, Rich, Okay, that last lifetime as a Viking was lame. You didn't learn anything. All you did was hide in a cave, okay? Everybody is running around experiencing the journey, and you just hid in the cave. You drank a lot of whiskey, and you were hiding. And I go, yeah, okay. But, I had to do that. And they said, well, why don't we try a new lifetime that works on this thing of courage and stuff like that? And you have free will, according to these people, these reports. You can say no. You can say, I don't want to do that. But your friends come to you and say, oh, no, wait. You have to play my drunk Uncle Pete, because if somebody else plays it, I won't learn the lessons I need to learn. But because it's you will help me. You're so good at playing the drunk uncle. You will help me learn these lessons that I've signed up for. Oh. I know this sounds contrary to every religious, scientific thing anyone's ever heard. But listen, the one caveat that I do, or the one thing that I do in my work is I film people, okay? I'm not asking them questions. I'm a camera in the room. Hypnotherapist is asking the questions. In the 50 cases, many of them were with a guy named Scott Tamble, who's out of Claremont, California. Light Between Lives is his website. He does Skype sessions. He's very good. He's excellent. Paul Oren recommended him. But I've done them with different hypnotherapists. Again, I'm not asking the questions. I'm just listening. And then I'm comparing what one person said, 5 years ago with what somebody said last week.
Yeah,
so here's my journey.
Yeah, so you can get the parallels and stuff, and so you can figure out what's real and what's not. I got that, but we got to take a break here. I want to get into I want to get into your journey and talk about some of these parallels that you realized, and also I got some other questions too. I mean, good God, how could you not have questions about this? This is fantastic, right? But we'll be right back with Rich Martini. You guys stay with us.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
This is Corbin, son of the one and only Joe Root, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
Did you know that qualified patients can access medical cannabis in all 50 states? Cannasense is a medical cannabis collective that helps patients in all 50 states gain access to cannabis medication. Cannasense does this with a streamlined process and strict compliance with the Compassionate Use Act of 1996, the Affordable Care Act, and the U.S. Constitution. It is important for each patient to understand the legalities involved, the costs, and the benefits of cannabis medication. Through truth, legalization, and education, the medical benefits of cannabis will supplant recreational perceptions, and the real vision for change will be realized. Let the people and their personal doctors take control of their medical cannabis decisions before the greed of big business takes over. The tipping point for change is today, and Cannasense is ready to lead the charge and enable legal access for all qualified patients to medical cannabis through its proven system. For more information, go to thefringe.fm/care or click the banner on the website today.
I think by now we can get the information.
I love magic, and on Lighting the Void, each and every week, you will get to hear shows about magic, mysticism, and many other subjects that stretch your mind and imagination. So when I got my mind on the magic and the magic on my mind, I listened to Lighting the Void on the Fringe FM. It's magic.
May the gods look with favor upon you.
You're wondering what we're going to do to you, aren't you? I'm getting older and noticing that my body just doesn't work as well as it used to. So I like to keep fit as possible by hitting the gym a few times a week. Recently, I started having a nagging bicep pain, and it got so bad I couldn't even lift the weights. When I was complaining about it to a friend, he told me about angioprim. He said chelation helps remove toxins, heavy metals, and cholesterol in veins and arteries that may cause blockages. You know, after just 1 week of taking angioprim, the pain was gone, and now I'm back in the gym full strength. Scientific research proves the active ingredient in angioprim has superior oral chelation action that helps promote cardiovascular health. So to learn more, go to angioprim.com. That's ANGIOPRIM.com, or talk to a trained consultant. Call Angioprim toll free at 877-882-7221. You'll feel better with more energy. Call 877-882-7221 or go to the website angioprim.com.
Come, walk through the mossy creek and up the hill. Never mind the flashing lights and otherworldly shadows. They stay hidden within the trees. Come, step up to the shack and begin your journey to the answers that you seek. This is Lady Anne, and you are listening to Lighting the Void on the Fringe FM.
Okay, here we go. AncientLifeOil.com. AncientLifeOil.com. Now this is for CBD. AncientLifeOil.com. Again, for CBD. Where do I get CBD? AncientLifeOil.com. It's pretty good stuff. Organic, non-GMO. We are the Ferrari of CBDs. AncientLifeOil.com. You know, they say when you mention a person's name 3 times when you first meet, that you're going to remember. So I'd say to you, nice to meet you, AncientLifeOil.com. It's AncientLifeOil.com, right? Nice to know that you help people. AncientLifeOil.com. Think about this. Occasional stress, occasional anxiety, occasional inflammation, occasional stiffness, and intruders that get you down. AncientLifeOil.com. Okay, so I'm going to give you a fact for the day. So Ancient Life Oil does not help you with business deals. Hold on a second. If you feel better, it could help you make a better decision. Okay, I'm wrong. Just remember to go to AncientLifeOil.com.
All right, everyone, this is Justin from the UK. Excuse the chitty. If you're into the Fringe and you want to hear the brass tacks, me old China plate, Joe Roop and his guests on Light in the Void will open your mince pies. You need to shut your north and south and use your 10-speed gears and listen to them bubble. You could hear a Barry Crocker, no Brussels, but he ain't no holy friar. Anyway, you beat a Barnaby Rudge and take a butcher's.
You're listening to Lighting the Void. The call-in number is 1-800-588-0335. If you would like to text, you can text in at 501-777-5631.
All right, Rich Martini is our guest tonight. RichMartini.com is the website for reference. You're listening to the program on your mobile device, either on TalkStream Live, the Paranormal Radio app, the Fringe FM app, TuneIn, Alexa, wherever you're listening from. Hit up that website, open up a new window there, RichMartini.com. We're talking about the afterlife and lives in between lives, what happens in that state. And we have referenced Michael Newton's book, Journey of Souls, who you actually got to meet. And as you were talking about your journey before the break, and I was wondering what parallels did you start to notice? As you said, I wasn't there to interview people. I was just there to film. But you did observe some interesting things, right? I'm sure.
Well, so they let me film for the whole week. And Michael agreed to do this interview, and he said, "This is my last interview. I'll give it to you." What was funny about that is he lived on for another 10 to 15 years. It's just he said it that way, and it turns out to be the last filmed interview. So I filmed it for about 3 hours. I had read all of his books, so I was up on what his journey was, and I was listening to see if there was any kind of any incongruities, let's say. And like you, I had that same idea. And like many people do, they go, well, how could 7,000 people, that's what he had. He had 7,000 clients over 30 years. They all pretty much said the same thing about the afterlife. So how could that be? Unless he was somehow, I don't know, getting them to say the same things or leading them down the path. So they offered me a session. They said at the end of this week, they said, "Rich, why don't you film yourself doing a session?" And at first I thought, well, I can't be objective if I do that. But then I remembered Plimpton, the guy who did Paper Tiger, George Plimpton. He actually went out, and did the thing and then wrote about it. So I thought, okay, I can prove this wrong. I don't believe in the afterlife per se. I'm a skeptic. I'm not entirely convinced that what they're saying is accurate, even though I had seen people doing it. I was shocked. And I thought, if they're trying to lead me or something and they say, what do you see? And I don't see anything, I'm going to say that. And I'll do that for 4 hours because it's a 4-hour session, roughly 4 to 6 hours. So we set up the camera and I started to film myself. And this guy, Jimmy Quast from Maryland, walked me back, through my life. And I started seeing things that I didn't recall. I didn't realize that I could recall these things. My birth, for example, like, what? Oh, okay. I see the doctor's face, the whole bit. And so I said things that I found out later on to be true, that my dad wasn't there, but he was driving there, stuff like that. But he said, let's go to a previous lifetime that has some significance to this lifetime. And I saw myself as a Lakota Sioux medicine man. And I got to tell you, my first reaction was to go, oh, come on, Rich. Your conscious mind is always awake. You're never under with hypnosis. You're always aware. So my conscious mind was going, come on, you saw Dances with Wolves. You're making this up. You're a screenwriter. You're making anyway. And so, but I said all these things. He asked me my name. I said it was Watanka. And I thought, oh my God, Tatanka, that means buffalo. You can't even make up a name. And then he said, well, where are we? And I said, well, I'm up in this place. I'm sort of come up here to gather herbs, but my tribe was attacked. And he said, who attacked your tribe? And I said, oh, the frickin' Huron. As I said it, I thought, Huron, are you nuts? They're in upstate New York. They're in Canada. Lakota are out, all the things that your brain thinks it knows. And then he said, well, let's go visit your tribe. And I said, I don't really want to. And he said, why? And I saw why. Everybody had been wiped out. And I went to a teepee, and I've never touched a teepee, but in my mind's eye, I was holding onto the skin. And now I know what that feels like. In this life, I've never touched it, but I know what that feels like, opening up a teepee. And I looked down and I saw a woman. I could see the back of her head. Her throat had been cut. And I said, they've killed my wife and taken my son. Now, there was no son in the room, in the teepee, but I felt it. I felt that sentence as if I was experiencing it. And I was thinking to myself, oh my God, why, if you're making this up, why would you make up this awful, awful feeling? I mean, I've never felt, knock on wood, I've never felt that before or since. And then at some point, at some point he said, where do you want to go? And I said, well, I just want to go home. And I gave the story about how I had taken a bottle of whiskey and drank it and jumped into the Mississippi River and drowned myself. And at the time, I must say, I was thinking to myself, I must be making this up. But 6 months later, I was at a funeral in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. I ran into a cousin of mine who said, well, I just happen to be a historian for the Lakota. And I said, wow, how did this happen? He told me. I said, well, wait, let me just run some stuff by you. He said, wait, don't tell me anything. What were you wearing? I said, well, I was wearing buckskin and I had 2 feathers. He said, were they up? I said, no, they were down. And he said, well, that means you were a medicine man. I said, oh, okay, well, that's what I said. I said, well, what about this name, Watanka? He said, Wakantanka, it means the Great Spirit. It was like a derivation, like a nickname for you. That was what they would have called their medicine man. And I said, well, okay, what about this thing about the Huron? He said, you're sitting in the spot where they fought for 60 years, Eau Claire, Wisconsin. I didn't know that. I couldn't look it up. I tried to look it up. So that's the thing about science. Science asks that, science thinks that past life memories are cryptomnesia. You heard it, you read it, you saw it. But when you learn something new from a session that later turns out to be true, you have to allow that there might be some other reason for it, including a past life memory. So then I went into the Between Lives realm. After that, I said I want to go home, and suddenly I was home. And I was there meeting with my counsel. Everybody has one. I mean, I had heard this, but here I was looking at these 8 guys, and I'm asking them questions, and they're answering me. It's the wildest thing.
Well, what does it look like, though? I can't help but wonder.
Well, in my case, each person has their own counsel. So it's a creation, like a CGI creation that you've created with your mental math, and they've created with their mental math. It's like an agreement. Let's say your counsel could be in Disneyland. It doesn't matter. It's wherever you want it to be. Some people have outside counsels. Some people have inside counsels. And believe me, I've been doing this a long time. I've heard many, many different counsels, different tables, different amounts of people. It's usually 3 to 12 people, and sometimes more, a little bit more, and sometimes very few, and sometimes the council's not all there. They don't all want to participate in this kind of weird conversation. Okay, I'm just telling you. But in my case, I saw 8 council members. I asked them all questions. They were funny. They made fun of me. They mocked me. It was hilarious. And at some point, I was so startled. I said, is there anything I can tell people that I can bring back with me? And this council member said, tell people to just let go. And when he said that, I realized, oh, he's talking about let go of anger, let go of fear, let go of worry, let go of resentment. Let go. Just let go of all the stuff we hold on to that has nothing to do with love. And this term love comes up. It sounds like a religious term, but I'm telling you, in so many cases, near-death events, out-of-body experiences, I ask people, what are you feeling in the midst of this experience? And they'll say, I'm feeling this overwhelming, unconditional love. When I first heard it, I was like, what the hell does that mean? We can say it, unconditional love, but we don't really live it or experience it. I mean, some people have it with their pets, right? Some people have it with their families, not that many, but some do, meaning you could do anything and they still love you unconditionally. But what these people say consistently under deep hypnosis or not is that when they go home, they feel this state or this field of unconditional love. So instead of just setting it aside like a term, love, I love you, love me, let's love each other, examine it. What does it mean? What does it mean? What does love mean? And when I do that, and when I really focus in on it, it feels like love has something to do with consciousness. It has something to do with connectivity, how we're all connected. Okay? So let's go back to the story. So I've now done this session, and I'm starting to make this film, and FlipSide comes out, the book and the film, and then I present these findings to the University of Virginia, these scientists there. I had 12 cases at this point, and they said, Rich, hypnosis isn't considered valid science. I said, okay, well, what is? So we talked about and I pointed out to them, look, Michael Newton had 7,000 cases, but I didn't know at the time was that Dr. Helen Wambach, a psychologist from New Jersey, had 2,000 cases that she had done 10 years earlier than Michael Newton. Her book is called Reliving Past Lives, and she did another one after that. But Reliving Past Lives is her methodology for how she approached it like a scientist. She had the identical results, except instead of one-on-one sessions, she would do like 10 or 12 people at a time. And what she would do is allow them to choose what period or time. She would give them like 6 different years and say, you pick a time. And then she would instruct them to remember all the details they saw. And then afterwards, she took all their details and compared them to the historical record, the archaeological record. So people are remembering, let's say, a lifetime in Egypt. What kind of clothing are you wearing? What kind of utensils are you using? What kind of home do you live in? And she found that statistically, what they were remembering was identical to the archaeological record. So, for example, she found that 50.1% of all of the people that she did, 2,000 people, remembered a lifetime as a male, and 49.9% remembered a lifetime as a female. And each one of them had these different eras where they remembered, the utensils, where they're like when a spoon went to a fork, a 2-pronged fork went to a 3-pronged fork, went to a 4-pronged fork. Those kinds of details you just don't think about, but she did. And she did this massive study. And so to find 2 scientists, let's say, Michael Newton and Helen Wambach, saying the same things about the afterlife. So then I started talking to scientists about near-death events, where I would interview people who had a near-death experience. And during the course of the near-death experience, they would revisit the event. And by revisiting that experience, they start to learn and see new things. And then I got a call from a medium, Jennifer Schaeffer. Jennifer Schaeffer works with law enforcement here around the country, actually, on missing person cases. She's very effective at what she does, but she contacted me out of the blue and said, I've read your book. I really want to work with you. I think we have something we can do together. So Jennifer and I met, and I've talked about this online, but basically we did an interview with a subject that I knew, a person who had died some years ago, right? Somebody I knew a lot about, their historical record. And I thought, well, this will be an interesting test, because Jennifer doesn't know anything about this person, but I do. And I know a lot of things about the person that aren't public knowledge. And we spent 3 hours interviewing this person. But what makes it so interesting and mind-boggling to me is that this person, who died 70 years ago, is telling me new information, stuff that I didn't know, and I've done all the research. I've worked on every movie about this particular person. They paid me a lot of money for my research, and I know what happened to this person, but Jennifer didn't know, but whoever we were talking to did know, you see? And at some point, this person said, I'm going to tell you something that nobody knows. I mean, I asked her, how did you die? And she said an answer, and I knew this was not public knowledge. And so took me 6 months to verify what she had said. But 6 months later, buried in an article in a UPI story in Chicago in 1977, I discovered that the two guys who dug up Amelia Earhart had only found her arm, which is what Amelia had told me 6 months earlier.
Wow.
That when these two GIs dug up my body on Saipan in 1944, they only found my arm. In the Chicago Tribune article of 1977, it says, these guys said off camera, when we dug up her body, we only found a partial rib cage and an arm. By saying partial rib cage, it is awesome. So anyway, that's what I was focusing on. But I want to tell you, in the past year or so, I've dropped hypnotherapy as a vehicle, and I just start talking to people about their experience, a memory, a dream, some event that happens, a near-death experience, anything, it doesn't matter. And by just examining that, by walking them into the memory, a dream they had where they thought they saw their mom or dad who passed away, I asked them to change it from past tense to present tense. And by doing so, I've been able to walk them in to visit their councils. If you look up my name, Rich Martini, and Dr. Drew Pinsky is a very nice guy. His wife is doing a blog thing. Drew told me, I don't believe in the afterlife. I'm a skeptic. I said, fine, let's just see where we go. And in 15 minutes, he was talking to his counsel. At some point, and he's not under hypnosis, I'm just asking questions. And at some point, I said, can we talk to your guide? And he said, yeah. So I said to his guide, can we walk Drew in to visit with his counsel? And Drew said, what's my counsel? And I looked at him and said, well, I wasn't talking to you, was I? So the point is, I've been talking people in to visit their counsel. It's my new book. It's going to be called Architecture of the Afterlife. It should be out in a month or two. But it's these cases of me talking to people about past lives without any hypnosis at all, and then verifying the details by doing forensic, deep dives into genealogy reports to see how accurate or inaccurate these reports are. How about that for a run-on sentence?
Yeah, that is, that is pretty intense, man. That's, I could see, because I could feel like your energy, like how has this changed you as far as, has it changed you? I mean, energetically, the fears that we think about, we think about it a lot.
It's a great question, Joe. I'll tell you that when I did the first session with Jimmy Quast, and I did this 4-hour thing where I was talking to people, seeing people, reporting everything that other people had, but hearing new details. When I left that session, packed up my camera, I walked out of that hotel and I felt as if the axis of the earth had shifted, as if somehow everything I had been told up to that point was, I don't want to say wrong or inaccurate, but just slightly skewed. It was like I was being shown something that made the whole planet feel differently. It really was like walking out and seeing the earth from a completely different perspective. And I guess some people have that experience of a near-death event or something like that, or a tragedy or PTSD kind of event, where they survive some traumatic thing, and then they come out and they look around and they're like, oh my God, I'm alive. Do you remember the Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge? That was a movie you might have seen in high school, but it took place in the South, and it was during the Civil War, and a guy is on a bridge and he's about to be hanged, and somehow he slips out of the noose and he dives into the river, and everyone's shooting at him, and he goes down river. It was a Confederate. He goes down river and he's getting out of the river, and the look at it's all a silent film, non-sync sound, and he's looking around and he's seeing life again. Oh my God, I'm alive. There's a spider web. There's the sunrise. There's the trees. He's so happy to be alive. And then he starts walking home, and as he sees his wife coming out of their house, which they used a plantation for that shot, just as he's about to reach out to her, suddenly his neck snaps, and you realize this has all been a dream that he's had just prior to him, getting killed on the bridge. Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. It's on YouTube. You can watch it for free. But the point is that you can experience life anew, let's say, by doing this kind of. And I'm not a hypnotherapist, and I recommend. If you go to the Newton Institute, you'll find a hypnotherapist near you. They're all over the world. They're in 200 different countries. They're trained by people. They know the Newton technique, where they help people. Takes 4 to 6 hours, and they access this e-ticket, this Disneyland ride, where you get to have this adventure. Not everybody is able to do it. Some can't. Sometimes they're not supposed to learn how the play ends. But in the cases I've done with Scott DeTamble, every single time they've been able to visit their counsel and see previous lifetimes and that kind of thing. So let me ask you, Joe, how would that change your life? How do you think?
Man, it would. The book, just reading the books themselves changed my life. So I can imagine experiencing this stuff that you're talking about. Well, and going through losing somebody, that's hard. And then to realize that, hey, they're not gone at all, Right. That's got to change everything. Everything.
Well, I'm fond of saying they're not gone, they're just not here. And so then what happened was this medium, I know we're coming up to a break. Are we?
Yes, we are. We got a few minutes, though.
Got a few minutes. All right, so I'll give you a preamble for the next segment. So when Jennifer Schaeffer got a hold of me, at first I was like, mediums? I don't believe in psychics. But, psychics are people who predict the future. The future's not set, so I already know that, they're giving me a likely outcome. They don't know what it could be. They might feel like they do, but it's just not the case. So in Jennifer's case, though, she's a medium. So it's like a cell phone. It's like having a cell phone to the flip side. So I thought, wow, this is a great opportunity to talk to people that I knew on the flip side, right? My friend Bill Paxton, the actor. I interviewed 3 different mediums, I asked them all the same questions about Bill, about where we met, where he was in his career, et cetera, et cetera. And at some point, Michael Newton came through, because Michael passed away about a year ago, maybe a little longer. But Michael came through. And when we come back from the break, I'll tell you what he said.
All right, man, you should be hosting this show, man. You do good. You got it down, because that's what I was thinking. I was like, I wonder if we should leave that for the next part, right?
I'll tell you what Art Bell had to say, and I talked to him last week.
You talked to Art Bell last week. That's fantastic. Okay, that's a good tease right there. We will leave that for the break, and we'll be right back with Rich Martini.
And you are listening to The Fringe FM.
Get the Tea is the #1 cleansing tea in America. We cleanse you with organic ingredients, and when used daily, you can increase your energy. Cleanse from intruders that set up camp in your colon. Cleanse your colon and feel the difference. Call Colon cleanses can be uncomfortable. Not Life Change Tea at GetTheTea.com. Life Change Tea is mild yet truly effective. Cleanse your insides every day. Easy to make, easy to use, and feel the results. Are you sold? Okay, then here's how to order. Log on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. Look for our specials on the front page. Get the Tea also carries top-rated supplements for those who care about their health naturally. Again, log on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com and feel the results. And for those of you that arm yourself with information, come to our webinar every other Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific time. That's every other Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific. You can sign up at GetTheTea.com.
I'm Ryan Gable, and I want to remind you to keep your radio, phone, tablet, or computer tuned to The Fringe FM, and visit the website thefringe.fm to listen to the entire lineup of shows. You can also catch my broadcast, The Secret Teachings, Monday through Friday, beginning at 12 a.m. midnight U.S. Pacific Time, right here on The Fringe FM.
Alex.
Hi, I'm Alex Exum, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
OMG! People are jumping on board to the Life Change Tea Regiment. Brew, steep, and drink for a gentle, taste-great cleanse. It's changing how they feel. See what everybody's talking about. Log on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. Life Change Tea aids in digestive slowdown and helps people get moving down a healthy path. We won't make claims. We'll just let you decide. Experience is much better than a commercial anyway. If you want results, log on to GetTheTea.com and purchase your super strength cleansing tea. You won't be disappointed. And if you're looking for some mind-body suggestions, go to YouTube and punch in the search bar Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now. Put power into your health now. So, GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com for super strength tea. And YouTube, Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now for valuable suggestions. GetTheTea.com. The tea that makes you go.
What's up, Joe? Hey, man, I just wanted to say your show, dude, keeps getting better and better and better. I love Lighting the Void and the Fringe FM.
This is Reverend John M. Polk. Please visit me at johnpolkmedia.com and visit my show, Quantum Hologram Matrix, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, every Tuesday on thefringe.fm.
Hey, Fringe FM listeners, did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to the Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
Hey, is that a new music app?
Yeah, check it out. Surfer Music Discovery. It links to thousands of online stations, but the twist is you see the song names and artists that are now playing live.
That's different. No guessing. Looks like a waterfall of music.
So many formats. Rock, oldies, country, R&B, jazz, and a whole lot more.
How's that spelled?
Surfer. S-U-R-F-R.
Is it expensive?
It's free. No need to sign up or sign in.
Get the Surfer Music app free from Google Play or the App Store.
Hola, Fringe listeners. This is Dave Cruz of Beyond the Strange, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
To call Joe, pick up the phone, dial 1-800-588-0335, toll free from the United States or Canada.
Richard Martini is our guest tonight. We're talking about life between lives and the afterlife. Also his book FlipSide, which I can't wait to get. I just noticed that it's on Audible. And you guys know that I'm an audiobook nutcase. I got Linda Godfrey's audiobook last night, and now I know the next one I'm going to get. Because if it's anything, I'm sure it's just an adding on to Newton's book. But I've got so many questions for you, but I don't want to stop what you were about to tell us. I mean, you were talking about you talk to Art Bell in the afterlife. That's pretty cool.
That's right. There you go. Well, I'll tell you about that in a second, but I'll just let you know I've done 6 books now. They're all in Audible. FlipSide is probably a little rusty because I didn't know what I was doing. By the time we get to Backstage Pass from the FlipSide, I kind of know what I'm doing. I would say the one that's the most epic, epic meaning large, is Hacking the Afterlife.
Yeah,
it's also on Audible, and that one's that's not for everybody. I got to warn people. Listen, we were just talking about this, but not everyone's supposed to know how the play ends. So if this kind of conversation bugs you or bothers you in any way or makes you feel uneasy, that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm really trying to put people at ease, which is to help people to let go. I mean, that is my path. But in terms of Michael showing up, so I meet this medium, Jennifer Schaeffer, and I film her for 3 hours, and she blows my mind. And then I just say, well, let's meet up every week. And so for 4 years, we meet up every Thursday for a couple hours, and I interview. I started with people that I knew, Bill Paxton, other people that Luana knew. Right? People that she worked with. She was an actress. She did over 30 films and 300 TV shows. She was an easy writer. So, somebody passes over that she knew, I'll say, well, can we talk to this person? Jennifer doesn't sometimes know who they are. So, like, for example, Harry Dean Stanton was an actor, good friend of Luana's, who passed away. He was in the Missouri Breaks and a bunch of other movies. If anybody saw Big Love, he was in that with Bill Paxton. So, Harry Dean passed away, and Harry was a famous atheist, okay? And he was a jaded skeptic about the afterlife. And he told everybody who wanted to hear, that's what he would say, there is no afterlife. And so, and I had dinner with him a few times talking about that stuff. Hilarious. But anyway, so now he passed away, and he shows up in one of our sessions. Just shows up. She goes, there's some guy in here named Harry. And I go, oh, my gosh. Yeah, he passed away last week. It's a friend of Luana's. And I say, so Harry, what's it like in the afterlife? For somebody who didn't believe in it. And he proceeds to tell me a story that is unbelievable. I won't get into it because it's too long. But it's an amazing story that I could verify every single detail that he was saying, which I did later. It's in the book Backstage Pass. But the most important thing is I said, look, Harry, your memorial service is coming up. I'm going to be there. And so what do you want me to tell people? He said, tell people to believe in the afterlife. And I said, oh, Harry, that's hilarious. I'm going to go to your memorial service. All these people are going to be there, most of his close friends, atheists as well. And I'm going to say, hey, everybody, Harry told me from the afterlife, you should believe in it. They're going to laugh me out of the room. He said, well, then tell them to believe in the possibility of an afterlife, and then they won't waste another minute arguing about it like I did. I thought that was okay. That I could do. He gave me 3 specific messages to tell people at the memorial service. I can't say their names because, they were like health conditions. And I went to each person, and everybody in your audience would know who they are. But I went to each person and I said, hey, this is going to sound weird, but Harry told me you should go and get your prostate checked. And the person looked at me and said, I just went for my first treatment today. Somebody else, I said, Harry told me to tell you you've got to start taking water with your arthritis medicine. And he looked at me and said, my son tells me that every day. And then a former girlfriend, I said, Harry tells me that when he got over there, the child that you lost was waiting for him. And she, burst into tears and said, I knew it. I knew he was still alive. So these kinds of details they're not for everybody. I can't even tell you who they are, you see. I'm not trying to prove anything. Each person has to do this on their own. But this is what's important. So Jennifer and I are meeting in our usual Thursday afternoon session, and she looks at me and goes, Morton is here. And I go, Morton? Who's Morton? She goes, that guy, the guy that you made the documentary about. I said, you mean Michael Newton? She goes, yeah, that guy. Now, which is funny because, of course, if she was trying to pretend that she, was making this up, wouldn't she get his name right? But I said, what does he want to tell us? Because I wasn't friends with him. I interviewed him, right? I sent him a couple of emails and a card or two. I was startled that he loved the film, right? I was really happy about that because he was a bit of a curmudgeon. But anyway, yeah, he's there. And I said, Michael, what is it you want to tell us? I said, what are you doing over there? He said, I'm helping people communicate. And I said, let me clarify that. You mean you're helping people over here to talk with their loved ones over there? And he said, no, the opposite. I'm helping people over here communicate with people over there on your side. Okay. And then I said, give me a 1, 2, 3. I was going on coast to coast that weekend. I said, give me a 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
What do you want me to say? And he said, tell people to say their loved one's name and then ask your questions. That was it. There were 2. And I said, well, wait a second. Okay, so you say the name of your loved one. Do you say it aloud or in your head? He said, it doesn't matter, Richard. I said, okay, then you ask questions. Well, how do people know that if they hear an answer, they're not making it up? And he said, when you hear the answer before you can form the question, then you'll know you're connected.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So this is what I tell people to do. And we've all had that experience. The phone rings, you know who it is. Or whatever, something, before it happens, I just know that this is, and then you sort of rationalize it all. I kind of knew, Bob. So here's what he said, and this is what I've sort of expanded upon it, which is I tell people, take out a photograph of your loved one, the person that you miss that is no longer on the planet. Try to set your emotions aside. Not everybody can look at a photograph of a loved one, but I say, look, just put your emotions in a suitcase and set it right next to this idea, and you can always pick it up later. Another thing that I learned, and this is important, that I learned this from Jennifer's father. Jennifer's father, the medium, his father passed away, and we were talking about grief, and she had just couldn't work for like a year. And I said, so let's ask your dad, how do we help people with grief? He said, tell them to move grief to nostalgia. And I said, what does that mean? Jennifer said, I don't know. I said, well, ask your father. And he said, grief is only sad memories. Nostalgia is both sad and happy memories. When you can move grief to nostalgia, you begin the healing process. Okay? So here's Michael talking about talking to a loved one on the flip side. And I'm saying, take out a photograph. Remember the photograph. Remember when it was taken. Look at the face of the person that you want to talk to. Hear their voice in your head. You're the only person who knows the frequency, what it sounds like, the timbre, the tone. Just hear it. And then in your mind's eye, imagine they're standing in front of you, just like in that photograph, and you're there in front of them. And you ask them simple questions. If people are having a hard time with that idea, I say, look, ask them to nod for yes, shake their head for no, shrug their shoulders for I don't know, and don't say anything for I can't answer that question. Okay? That's 4 answers. And what I do is I say, now just ask your questions. Start very simply. Ask simple yes or no questions. How are you? Or where are you? Or are you here? Right? Those 3 are complicated. 2 of those are complicated. Are you here? If they shake their head no, you have to go with whatever they do. So if they nod, yes, I'm here. Can I ask you questions? Yes. Okay. So then ask more complex questions. Who was there to greet you when you crossed over? And an image will come to your head or mind or a thought. And of course, you're going to say, oh, that would be likely who they would see. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's the last person you think they would see. And you just try not to judge the answer. Just write it down. Just, Uncle Pete. Oh, my God, why would he be there? Just write it down. And then as the answers come, they get more complicated, let's say. But I say, ask them questions about their journey, not about you. People can't help it. They go like, why haven't you visited me? Stuff like that. Just ask them, who was there to greet you when you crossed over? What are you doing now? Who are you hanging out with? What do you miss, if anything? What's your favorite food that you remember? Just allow those answers because it helps them to practice putting images in your head. So the easiest way for them to communicate with us is through dreams because you're asleep. So I'll tell you, Luana gave me also a really good tip. Aside from Michael Newton, the other great tip was my wife saw her in a dream. And my wife, who hadn't seen her in 20 years, said, what are you doing in this dream? You're dead. You died 20 years ago. And Luana said, think of 11:11. We meet at the decimals. So when she woke up, she came to me and said, I don't understand this dream. And I said, well, I think I do. Because my dad was an architect. When you have a straight line and you want to signify a hallway, you just draw an 11. 11 means hall. So if you think of 11 as a hallway, right, the digital clock, of course, nobody ran around saying, hey, it's 11 minutes after 11. No, they see the digital clock and they see the two hallways. They have to slow down their frequency or their energy. It's different. And it's different for each person, but they have to slow it down so that they can communicate an image, a thought, whatever. We have to speed up. And how do we speed up? Well, we meditate. You know, we clear our brain from all the noise that's in there. Might be a dream. Your brain is clear from everything else. And so that's their opportunity. And we meet at the decimals. In between those two hallways, they can send you an image. They can send you a sound. They can send you a smell. They can send you a sensation. Sometimes, you know, you suddenly smell some rose perfume and you go, Grandma?
Yeah, right.
You know, sometimes you have this weird, our thing comes on TV and it's the thing that they loved. And you're like, well, how could that be? But all they've done is focused your attention. They've hit you in the head with a finger tap to say, pay attention to this song. That's our song. And you can't help but go, are they here? Well, yes. As soon as you think about them, they are here. So I've been doing this for some time now, and I can just tell you, the majority of people have reported to me, and they write me. They send me an email. You know, they go, I can't believe it, but, you know, my mother told me this thing. My father, my child, who I haven't talked to. This guy wrote to me just recently. You know, I don't know him. Sometimes I write on Quora. And so he writes to me and says, you know, I heard what you said, and I went out and I tried it, and nothing happened, and I was trying to get my wife, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I tried, and nothing happened. And he said, and then one day I was walking on the beach, and suddenly she was there. It was like it took her that long to figure it out as well. Suddenly she was there, and he said, I've been able to feel her and hear her. She's on his shoulder. She's talking to him. She's, you know, we can't help but feel like our best friend is gone, and there's an emotional attachment to that. But if you can just think of it as a performance, they aren't gone. They just left the stage. They're backstage. They took off their costume and they're backstage. They're applauding what you're doing. And you don't want to stop the play and go, well, what are you doing back there? You don't want to look out in the theater and go, I can't see you, you know, whatever. You just continue on with the play. Go ahead.
And I can't wait to get into your books, by the way. Jeez, man. Like, really can't wait. But Michael's books, I've listened to, read a few times, and the one thing that I noticed was big, and I'm sure you can probably talk about, is when people love each other, right? And that this was huge to me, because I couldn't imagine that was a real thing, that these people... You know how you said people would play different characters, right? And but it seemed like there was this thing about people that loved each other where they didn't always play different characters. And they were so attached that the soul wouldn't leave the body sometimes until the last minute, you know, no matter how much pain there was or whatever. And then sometimes when there was pain, they would just leave. But it was like, it was the hardest stuff to read, right? The hardest stuff to hear, because they were leaving that person, and then they would hang around a little bit, right? Just to see if they could get acknowledged, just acknowledge me or that you're okay, right, or something, you know?
Well, I'll tell you, this is the unusual thing, and I hear it all the time. You know, like I say, I work with Jennifer every week. And so if I'm talking to somebody, or I'm filming somebody under deep hypnosis or whatever, and I ask the question, so, you know, this previous lifetime, once you got outside of your body, what happened? And they'll say, I tried to talk to my wife. I wanted to let her know I was okay. And so you ask, well, were you able to do that? Sometimes they go, no, because they don't believe I exist. And then people have said, you know how annoying it is if you can imagine that your person that you love the most, they can't hear you. You could stand there and shout as loud as you want. They can't hear you, and they just go about their day. And so you might spend – now, time is different over there. So it's not like, you know, the time is the same as here. It's not like your Uncle Pete is just going to hang out here and wait until you acknowledge him. But Uncle Pete may try to turn lights on and off, might slip the rug a little bit, or whatever he's doing. I'm kidding. But he might do something that, you know, a dream.
Yeah.
And you wake up and you go, oh my gosh, I remember Uncle Pete. I had this incredible dream about Uncle Pete last night. That's funny. He was trying to tell me something. I can't remember what it is.
Didn't they give off energy sometimes? The way they were trying to explain it was like, I'm trying to connect.
Yeah, I'm trying to connect.
Energy.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, I think in Michael's case, he talked about there was one guy who said he put a blanket of energy around his wife to let her know that he was okay. And I'm just saying, I've filmed people talking about this, right, or the experience they've had where I'll give you an example. This woman came to a book talk that I gave by accident. She was going to the incest survivors group, and she walked into the wrong room. Of course, there are no mistakes, but she walked into this wrong room. And at the break, she comes up to me and she goes, how dare you say that my daughter might have planned her death? She was murdered. And I'm just citing the research, which is people say, you know, I knew I was going to die at a certain age. I knew that was going to be my exit point. I just knew that I wasn't going to stick around anymore. And I had to get back home because I had to get ready to do this next life as a doctor. I had to get ready to, you know, with the team. We were all going to get together. And so I was late. So whatever. So she was furious. And I said, you know, let me ask you, have you ever had a sensation of her being around, your daughter? And then she said, yeah, all the time. I smell her, and sometimes I feel like she's in the room. I said, now think of how hard it is for her to try to reach out to you. You're so angry about what happened to her that it's very difficult for her to get through to say, Mom, I'm okay. That's the consistent thing that people say. Dr. Elise Medhus, her son killed himself, and she was a skeptic and an atheist, and her phone rang one day, and it was her son. And on the cell phone saying, Mom, I'm okay. And that blew her mind. She didn't know what that was. And then about a week later, month later, something like that, in Atlanta, a medium called her out of the blue, Jamie Butler, and said, your son is in my living room, and he refuses to leave until I call you. Since then, Dr. Medhus, channeling Eric.com, E-R-I-K, she's been interviewing her son with people on the FlipSide. Now that's also not for everybody because she doesn't have any filter. She just lets everybody do whatever they're going to do. I try to focus a little more on the new information part. And, you know, you'll see that some of the interviews are all over the map. But as when you read in my book, It's a Wonderful Afterlife, I do quote some of the Eric sessions because they're identical to the same thing that I learned, you see. Same with Hacking the Afterlife. I quote some of Eric's sessions because, and I'm a friend of Dr. Medhus now. Anyway, and so the point is, these are all things that we can examine. That's the point. Can we examine what people are saying on the flip side? Why is it important to examine what people are saying on the flip side? Why is it important to talk to anybody that we would normally consider to be dead? They aren't dead. They're just not here. But why talk to people who are no longer on the planet? And the reason is, I think, is because once we realize that how they came here, how they chose their parents and chose their lifetime and chose to be here, chose to be our friend, chose to be our lover, chose to be our child, chose to be our parent. Once we examine that, we realize that we might choose to come back. So if we're going to come back here to this planet, doesn't it make sense to leave behind fresh air, water, and earth? If not for our children, then for our own return.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that would be smart, wouldn't it? I know I'm coming back. I need to stash this somewhere or do something right, you know, or not just that, but help
leave
the planet.
Behind a clue. Yeah, help the planet. I totally agree. I tell you, so when I'm talking to people on the flip side, it doesn't matter who it is. I'll say, so, dude, you're over there on the flip side. Tell us, how do we save our planet? Or how do we help the planet? Or what can we do? How can we get rid of fossil fuels? I ask those questions because, as you'll see in Backstage Pass to the Flip Side, if you ever get to them, I interview people who were scientists who were no longer Stephen Hawking, Nikola Tesla, Thomas Edison, Carl Sagan. These were all atheists. They were all science, well, except for Edison. And I asked them, from your perspective now, how can you help us figure out how to save the planet? And now, look, it's not about me asking the question. What I'm trying to do is get scientists to ask the question. I'm trying to show that it's possible to ask a question. And I get these answers from them, which are fascinating because they're about one. Recently, I heard that water itself has properties that that have energy within. And I was like, what? And so this guy was explaining how there are elements of water that you can use for energy. And the next week, I saw in the Wall Street Journal that they discovered that uranium is naturally occurring in salt water, and that it's not the kind of uranium that causes problems of radiation and plutonium, etc., but it has the same reaction. So it's like good uranium is in seawater, and now they're using science to figure out how to extract that, not to turn that into a plant, you see? So anyway, so the idea is asking questions to the flip side. And so just recently I asked this question, and I said, how can we help our planet? Amazon was on fire. Mm-hmm. And the answer I got was plant 1 trillion trees. And I said, excuse me, do you mean 1 billion trees? No, plant 1 trillion trees. So you mentioned Alexa the other day, or the other break. Yep. And so I asked Alexa, I said, how many trees are on the planet? She said 3 trillion trees are on the planet. Wow. So if this is accurate, what they told me from the flip side, so that means, and I said, why? Why would planting 1 trillion trees help the planet? And this person said, it will take the carbon out of the atmosphere and replace it with oxygen, which will balance the planet and it'll bring the temperature down. Totally makes sense to me. Yeah. But I heard it from somebody on the flip side telling me plant 1 trillion trees. So I've heard that. And actually, if you look it up, you'll see there's a lot of people talking about planting 1 trillion trees. So it's not just me, okay? So other people are being talked to and said, hey, dude, plant it. So New Zealand just announced last week they're going to plant 1 billion trees. And that means we need 1,000 different places to plant 1 billion trees if we want to. And that's an easy thing to do. It's not like driving your car.
That's a third of the planet. That's a lot of trees to plant.
It's a lot of trees. I mean, it would be nice to stop driving or to use blah, blah, blah. We know all that stuff, all the things that we're not supposed to do. But that's something that's positive. I can go plant a tree. Great. I can donate to somebody. I give them $100. I'll go plant 100 trees. Great. I feel like, okay, they're putting it in our hands to help ourselves. But like I say, I got that from the flip side. So your audience is going, yeah, enough about you, Rich. Let's hear about Art Bell.
Yeah, right. So, we've been waiting on that one, and we're almost at the next break. But no, go ahead and tell us, please.
So I'll just give you in a nutshell. So Heather Wade she was his assistant.
Right, yeah.
And she reached out to me when Art was still on the planet, and he wanted me on his show. This was after I'd done Coast to Coast. He told her to call me. Art wants you to be on the show. I was like, yeah, sure. And then time went on. It didn't happen. And then he was still alive. And then he was producing the show, and she had me on. So I did a 3-hour session with her. It's posted online where I did what I was talking about, where she had a near-death event, and we examined it. And during the near-death event, we went and visited with her counsel. We met all these people. It's fascinating. She had never heard of such a thing, and she does it live on the air. Okay? And then after Art passed away, I was transcribing that session for my next book, and I sent it to her. I said, this was an amazing thing we did. And she said, oh, my gosh, I need you to come on my show. We got a new show, Kingdom of Nye. I said, okay, when? This was about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I went on her show, and I said, look, I don't know if you want to examine this, but we can. If you want to talk to anybody on the flip side, including your mentor, we can do that. And I'm telling you, if you listen to that show, it's at Martini Prods. I put it up there. It's my side of the conversation, which I recorded. It's startling what she says, and she emotionally connects with Art, and Art asks me questions. This is mind-boggling. Art says to her, I've been trying to talk to you for so long since I died. You can't hear me. And then she says, Rich, Art is asking you, what's a way for him to be able to communicate with me?
It sounds about like him. Yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah. And he was really excited about being interviewed over there. And I said, well, Art, instead of trying to talk to her, which is very hard to do, you got to create sound waves and the ear has to hear it and people have to be paying attention. Instead of talking to her, just show her images. And she said later on in the show, when you said that, suddenly 25 images were downloaded right in my head. It was like when I broke my leg and he was there trying to help me. And they were all from his point of view, looking at her. You see, from his perspective, these 25 different images. So I asked him questions. I asked him about aliens. I asked him about UFOs. I asked him about Elvis. I asked him what he does now.
And all this is recorded? You got this?
It's all on the show. Yeah, it's about a 3-hour show, and it's on my page, Martini Prods, at YouTube, and then it's also on Kingdom of Nye, if you're a subscriber and however that works. But
that's really cool, man, because Heather's had one hell of a time with everything, and I'm sure that helped her.
I don't know her. Honestly, I don't know what you're referring to. I honestly don't. I know that after the show, I looked it up, what was she referring to? She was like, I had a really hard time. I had no idea. So the reason I say that is because I'm not creating something. She kept saying, Rich, you're taking me to places I have no idea how we're getting here. And I kept saying, well, Heather, I'm not going there. You are. She was just open to my questions, you see, and plus we'd done it once before. So
now,
it's easy.
Does that, because I've read in some occult material, I know that's a scary word for some folks, but that channeling actually does work better through women. Like if you, because of the energy. And is that true? Do you find that's true at all?
Nah.
Based on your experience?
No,
okay.
No, I'm not. I can tell you that channeling is a word. Once I'll tell you during a session that's in It's a Wonderful Afterlife, we were talking to a guide, and I brought this atheist to this session, and she's a skeptic. She didn't believe in anything I was saying. She said, "But I'm having an operation on my ovaries, and the doctor said hypnosis is a good thing, so I'm doing it." And I said, "Well, what do you want to say to your guide?" She said, "It doesn't matter. I'm not going anywhere." So I said, well, just make up a question. So she had a couple of questions, okay? What's the meaning of consciousness or shift in consciousness, and what or who is God? Those were her two questions, because she didn't believe we were going to get anywhere.
Those are good questions. Yeah.
And they were answered.
Really?
Should we answer them after the break? Or?
Man, you're the best. I got to tell you, you're the best guest I've ever had when it comes to teas and breaks. I don't even have to do anything. It's fantastic. We'll be right back with Richard Martini.
This is Elle. I listen to Lighting the Void because it's interactive radio with good content, interesting guests, and a humble host, sharing his journey through the esoteric. Hey, Joe Roop. Thanks for having us along for the ride.
Thank you so much for a delightful evening. Well, I got a lot of ground to cover.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
Ew, yuck. They're unhealthy and gross. Bugs, I hate bugs. We keep a clean home, but occasionally bugs show up. Well, I found something that is tougher than bugs. Orange Guard. From contact, it kills bugs. Plus, Orange Guard kills hidden bugs and keeps new bugs away for weeks. I know. I use Orange Guard. Plus, all of the ingredients of Orange Guard are on the FDA generally regarded as safe list. Orange Guard may be used around food, humans, and pets. It promotes a healthier planet, and here's a bonus. Orange Guard cleans where it's sprayed. Plus, it comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Orange Guard.
You can get Orange Guard at Ace Hardware. And listen, folks, Orange Guard is tougher than bugs, and it's safe to use. Go to orangeguard.com. That's orangeguard.com.
The Fringe FM isn't just a radio station. We also provide services for all your audio production needs. If you are interested in live radio or pre-recorded podcasts, we're here to help. We even do audio enhancements and voiceovers if needed. If you want to do a podcast or live radio show and even want the option to syndicate on terrestrial radio, from simple audio file enhancement to live production and call screening, we have you covered. We have worked with some of the best professionals in the business in order to provide coaching instruction for content creation, show structure, and more. Contact The Fringe Digital Media for more at info@thefringe.fm. That's info@thefringe.fm. Or call 501-777-5631 for a consultation.
Hey, this check is wrong. I worked a holiday and 7 hours of overtime. Not getting paid correctly is a real pain. It could also hurt our boss if our company provides out-of-compliance checks. That's right, construction companies doing business with the government can get fined, or officials of the companies can go to jail if the checks aren't right. It's a law. The Davis-Bacon Act has 30 compliance issues for every check, but there is an easy way for construction companies to be in compliance. EMARS offers Compliant Client, a web-based system that finds and corrects all 30 of the possible out-of-compliance check issues. Users of Compliant Client report an 80% savings in time and money. Running a weekly payroll usually takes about 5 minutes. All 15,000 plus clients of EMARS have never had a legal compliance issue. Plus, they sleep better on check day. Contact EMARS at emarsinc.com or call 480-595-0466.
I like to listen to Lighting the Void because of the guests, the content, and the host, Joe Roop. He's smart, he's intelligent, and he seems to ask the questions that we all have on our mind. We're all searching for the truth, and Joe helps us get closer to it. I love this show. I love this show. I love this show. Lighting the Void.
Listen, I want to tell you about G.I. Joy from GetTheT.com. It's the best alchemical concoction of goodies for your stomach and digestive system I can recommend, and that's all based on my experience. Packed with colostrum, acidophilus, aloe, peppermint, and turmeric. If you do your own research, then you know this is the bee's knees for the stomach and digestion. Now, due to Big Brother's ears and the eye in the sky, you know I can't go into the details about what it helped me with. All I can say is I got relief. It's non-GMO, no fillers, no preservatives, manufactured right here in the US of A, and delivered to you by the only people who stay on top of the game and are out in front. Go grab a bottle of G.I. Joy at GetTheT.com and see what all the fuss is about. Again, that's GetTheT.com.
Hello, this is Vance Nesbitt. Take the time to expand your mind by listening to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop right here on the Fringe FM.
Listening to Lighting the Void. The call-in number is 1-800-588-0335. If you would like to text, you can text in at 501-777-5631.
All right, Richard Martini is our guest tonight. And we're talking about the afterlife, life in between lives, too. Not just the afterlife, not just reincarnation, but, you know, what goes on in between lives. And before the break, you were telling me a fascinating story about what you and Heather experienced with Art Bell speaking through her. And I can't wait to watch that. But also before the break, you talked about that you had a session to where, or you had an experience to where someone asked 2 questions, like, pretty much, how does consciousness work and what is God? You know, those are the big 2.
Those are the big 2. And what's funny about that is I totally forgot thank you for reminding me, which is funny. But the reason I brought that up is because the guide who answered these questions, it was very funny. So I'm here with this woman who was a movie producer and a skeptic, like I said, and now she's doing this session, and she's like, I'm not going anywhere. And in 15 minutes, she's recalling a previous lifetime as a farmer in like 1820 in a town in Arizona, where at some point this old man marries a young filly, and the girl gets him in the buckboard and takes him out, makes him take her out for a ride. And then when at some point she's like, I'm hot, I need some water, and he gets out of the buckboard and she rides away. And so this girl is recalling that, and I looked up the guy's name in the town, and I found it. It no longer exists, but back then I found the town, that she's talking about. And then at some point, this guy dies, and he's like, oh man, this wife, she left me out here to die. And then the hypnotherapist says, well, okay, what happens next? And she said, I see myself standing next to my body, and I'm this young girl, but I'm jumping up and down with glee. And he goes, with glee, why? And she said, because I always wanted to be a cranky old man, and I did it.
Wow. Fascinating. Wow. Yeah, that is cool.
But now we get into the between lives realm, and she's talking, boom, we're there. And then she gets to her guide who seems a little bit like he's busy, like he doesn't want to be bothered. And so Scott DeTamble, the hypnotherapist, says, so, okay, I got your questions here. He didn't know what her question, he didn't know that she was jaded. And so he says, so what is this, the shift in consciousness? What does that mean? Uh-huh. And here's what the guide said. He said, you humans, you always think by naming things you're going to get a better handle on it. And I thought, oh my God,
that's true.
He's mocking humanity. But we were talking about channelers. You talk about twin flame. You talk about these terms that people throw around, and it's what humans do. They think they can get a better handle on it. But then he said, if you want to understand a shift in consciousness, he said the shift that's going on the planet, it's not a big deal. It's not like something happening in the cosmos,
yeah, right.
Which I thought was a funny reference. It's not like Saturn, like going out of orbit. He said, however, if you want to understand a shift in consciousness, imagine yourself a tiny little crab walking on the ocean floor, and suddenly you open your eyes and you realize you're in an ocean. That's a shift in consciousnly. And I could even see it, when he was saying it, and I realized, oh my God, he's talking about oxygen. Oxygen is what we breathe in and out. Well, obviously we know it's the thing that keeps us alive. We see it, we can't see it. But if you could think of it as water, right? We would never pollute it. Why would you go around polluting the thing that you pull into your lungs every day? That's a shift in consciousness. Thinking of a trillion trees. Trees mirror lungs. They're literally the mirror of a lung. A lung, you take in oxygen and you release carbon dioxide. Trees take in carbon dioxide and release oxygen.
That's something I've noticed too. It's so weird that you're saying this. We have so many synchronicities on the show. The other night I was watching that movie Phenomena with John Travolta, and how he was noticing the trees were one organism and talking about some of the stuff. And by the way, real quick too, we have a caller from northern Arkansas, not northern Arkansas, let's just say Arkansas. You got a question for us? I believe this is Sammy. It's been a while since you've called in, isn't it?
Hey, Sammy.
Yeah. Hi there. How are you?
I'm fabulous.
I just want to say that I'm finding the show interesting and I'm loving it. But I've had 3 NDEs before I was age 7, and it has taken me over 10 years to process the emotions because they were all traumatic. But I've always been aware of the afterlife and those on the other side because of that, I believe. But what would hypnotherapy do for me? At what point is a good time to do that if you were going to?
That's a great question, Sam. And first, I'd like to say, wow, what an unusual gift to have a near-death event, and 3 of them. Hypnotherapy can allow you to access that event again in a different way, because of course you're safe now. It's not going to make your heart race and nothing's going to happen to you, but you can examine it. And if you have a hypnotherapist, I recommend those trained by the Newton Institute, because they're familiar with this between lives area. You can say, well, then what happened after so let's say you see a white light. I don't know what you saw, or if you saw anything, if you're floating around the ceiling, or if you're seeing people. Go ahead.
Yeah, I did. But I wasn't allowed to cross over.
So, okay, that's what I'm saying. They tell you, it's not your time yet, which is disconcerting, because you feel these feelings of like, wow, I'm here. And they go, nope, not now. Take away the brass ring. So what you can do in hypnotherapy is you can say, well, what's beyond that light? Just walk beyond the light. It's not, you can come back. And then you start to see beyond the light, and you start to see your guides, your teachers, and the people that are on the other side of the light. I've said to some people, everyone you ever loved or whoever loved you throughout all of your lifetimes is on the other side of that light. You can always come back. Yeah. But if you want to see them and meet them and see, what's up, you can do that with hypnotherapy. You don't have to have a near-death event to actually walk through there. And by the way, you've heard of Dr. Eben Alexander. He's the guy who wrote Proof of Heaven. He's worked with these scientists at the University of Virginia and at Charlottesville. And Paul Orand is the guy I mentioned earlier. He's the former president of the Newton Institute. Well, he had a near-death event where he was struck by lightning. And during that event, that's what made him become a hypnotherapist, because when he went to examine the event, with the help of some therapist, he realized there was this moment when he was outside of his body and examining things, and that's what led him into that field. So he's been working with these scientists at the University of Virginia and people who've had near-death events and showing them how hypnotherapy can help people revisit an event, but from a completely safe perspective.
Well, now, ever since probably age 8 and 9, I would leave my body like every night after all that happened. Every single night, I kid you not. And it was like I just didn't want to be in this body or in this life.
Well, I'm not so sure. It's not that it felt like that, right? Because it's like, where are you going and why are you doing that? Here's the thing. If you look online, there's this wonderful talk by Dr. Bruce Grayson at the University of Virginia. It's called Is Consciousness Produced by the Brain? It's about 2 hours long. It's a medical conference that he gives this talk where he talks about the medical evidence of people who have had near-death experiences, who have traveled outside their body. He talks about people with Alzheimer's who at the very end of their lives, just prior to passing, suddenly they recall everything. They recover their memories. He talks about the medical cases. He said it's as if the filters are altered. It's as if the filters that were preventing us from accessing this information have died. And so, and he says, because afterwards, they do autopsies and the brains had atrophied and people shouldn't have remembered anything, but it's like the filters are dying with the brain. So what I like to say is that your filters were altered by your near-death event. And not everybody has those filters, right? Some of us do, some of us don't.
I believe that. Yeah, I believe that.
Many children don't have them until about the age of 8. Yeah.
That explains that feeling that you come back with more knowledge. Rather than that, it could be that filter is gone. The
filter's back up.
That makes a whole lot of sense.
No, yeah. And listen, I want to say this, and it's important to say it. There's a reason why you chose the planet. There's a reason why you chose to be Sam. And when they told you it's not your time yet, they didn't mean like you're not allowed in this club or, like it's a bouncer at the bar. What they're trying to point out to you is that you signed up for this adventure and you're in the bar. You're at the nightclub right now. You're having this adventure and you signed up for it, and you should have every adventure you possibly can here, because eventually you're going to go home.
Right.
That's fine. That's okay. But have the adventure. I mean, don't think of it the other way around, which is like, oh, there's a better party over there. No, you signed up to come here to have this party.
To come back to that, that childhood. But I think in the end, like what the takeaway was for me was that last year, I spoke with an older man, probably almost 70, and his son had taken his life several years back, but he was still very distraught over it, and I could connect with the son. And he kept asking me, I don't know why. Why? What happened? And the son told me there was no specific incident. It was this world was too much. His sister-in-law had killed his nieces and nephews, and he couldn't take any more of this world. It was just too much.
Well, I can tell you that that's in the research as well. That's in the research as well, Sam, where people will say, so you ask the question, why did you check out? And people will say, I couldn't handle it. So here's how that works. You sign up for a journey. You sign up, it's in the fine print. Nobody reads the fine print. But you sign up for a performance or a journey. And while you're here, of course, when you're back home, you forget how difficult it is here. But you sign up for it. You go, I can handle that. No. And then your guides might say to you, this is going to be a little hairy in this one little area here. You planned on this thing, and I don't know. And you say, no, I've got this. And you get here and you realize, oh, my God, I can't handle this. I can't take this emotion. I can't take the negative, or whatever it is. But you forget that you signed up and agreed that you would handle it. So I try to remind people, stick around. It'll get better. Things will change. Learn how to meditate. If you learn how to meditate, you can actually change the shape of the amygdala, which regulates serotonin. You can help your brain by learning how to do physical things. There are ways to help yourself. But it's good to know that whoever has checked off the planet earlier, whether it's suicide, whatever it is, it's somebody who left the stage. I like to point out.
That's a good
Robin
way to
Williams.
say it. That's somebody just left the stage.
Left the stage. Robin Williams, he was a wonderful, wonderful person. He helped so many people. He saved so many lives with laughter, and then people are angry at him for his exit. He tripped as he was leaving the stage, and everybody's like, "Oh, I can't forgive you because you checked yourself off stage." Well, all I can say is you just have to let that part of it go. Your loved one isn't gone. They're just home.
Well, what does that make you? And Sammy, thank you so much for your call, by the way. It's a really good question. Thanks, and thank you for sharing. Thank you so much. But what does that say to you about suicide? Like, does it change your thoughts on that at all? I mean, if somebody,
yeah, absolutely.
If somebody's suffering.
So here's what I try to cite the research, right? And by research, I'm talking about my research, which no scientist on the planet would agree with, but let's just call it that. And so when I first, like I said, I'm working with Jennifer, the medium, and people start coming through. All right. So one of my sessions, I invited 3 people. And when I got to her office, I said, look, I invited 3 people today. Can you tell me who they are? And she said, Anthony Bourdain, Kate Spade, Robin Williams. That was absolutely correct. They were sitting in her office waiting for me. So I sat down and I said, now look, guys, do you know why you're here? And they all made a gesture of like somebody who had hanged themselves. And I said, that's correct. That's correct. That's why I called you here today. I want to talk about this particular thing. And I know I sound insane when I talk about it this way, and I make light of it, and I'm not making light of it at all. But what I said to Anthony Bourdain is, so what happened? You had this wonderful life. And Jennifer said, he's showing meditation. And I said, oh, did you used to meditate? And his instant reply was, no, if I had frickin' meditated, I would still be on the planet. Because meditation is a physical way to help change. And I can tell you, I can cite the science. If you look at Richard Davidson's work at the University of Wisconsin, he proved that a single case of meditation, you can change the shape of the amygdala. It helps regulate serotonin. His research, if you look it up online, can cure or alleviate symptoms of depression. I mean, it's such an important thing to hear, but I'm hearing it from people on the flip side. And I'll give you one other example. There was a woman in Virginia Beach who came up to me after a talk. And during the talk, I was saying, you talk about Wednesday people. So let's say you decide you can't handle it anymore and you're going to check off the planet, and it's Tuesday night and you're like, I can't take it here anymore. I am not going to, and you check off the planet, and your friends all come to you and say, dude, on Wednesday you were going to get those tickets to Rome and you were going to come to Rome and we were all going to connect and your whole life was going to change. All you had to do was wait until Wednesday. Which is what I hear in the research. It's like and the person is like, oh no, you're right. I forgot that I didn't want to do that thing again. Anyway, and a woman came up to me afterwards and she said, I'm a Wednesday person. And I said, what do you mean? She said, well, I had decided I was going to do myself in. I had gone online. I found out all the chemicals that I was going to get. And she went to the hardware store to get them. And she was in line and she heard some boys talking behind her. And she turned around and there were two kids from Uganda whose parents had been killed in a war over there. And as she spoke to them, a chill went through her body and she realized, oh, I'm supposed to help these people. And she started this orphanage and now she lives in Uganda and she's helped thousands of children. She said, if I had gone through with it, I never would have gotten to those people. So, yeah, suicide's a terrible thing. Nobody is judged on the flip side for making a mistake. If you love someone and they make a mistake, if you love them unconditionally, and you run into them after the mistake, you don't chastise them. You say, I'm so sorry you weren't able to do the thing that you wanted to do but couldn't achieve. If you have a loving heart and you open it to people. All right, so let's get back to God for a second, right? Let's not forget, we have a question. What or who is God? And it relates to this. So here she is with her guide. He says that thing, you humans, you feel like you need to know everything, whatever. He said, God is beyond the capacity of the human brain to comprehend. It's not physically possible to do so. However, you can experience God by opening your heart to everyone and all things. Now, when he said it that way, he said it much quicker, but my brain froze because he said, it's beyond the human brain's capacity to understand. Okay, all right. Well, I thought he was ducking the question. He said, but you can experience it. And I thought, wait a minute. I've said this to people, you can talk about skydiving as much as you want. If you haven't done it, no words do it justice. You can say, well, you're falling and you're flying, whatever. Mm-hmm. You can't know it unless but you can experience things. Deep water diving, catching a fish, those kinds of experiences, it becomes part of who you are. So he's saying you can know, quote unquote, know God by what? Opening your heart to everyone and to all things. How do you open your heart? I think he means unconditional love. So if you suddenly went, I love everyone unconditionally, and I mean everyone, top to bottom, everyone, the guy pointing a gun at you, everyone, I love you unconditionally, you can do no harm, you can do me no wrong. Just start there. But then he added, and all things, and I realized things, the table in front of you, bottle of water, guitar, whatever that is, those are atoms that have come together in this realm to occupy that space. And if you open your heart to them, or to those atoms, to that guitar, to that piano, whatever it is, you open up yourself to the idea that everything has its place. Everything is there for a reason, and you can't sort of judge its purpose. But that idea of opening your heart to everyone and all things, I realize that's like when people talk about the epiphany they have when they feel connected to everyone. Suddenly their hearts are open to everyone, and they suddenly, people have a near-death event. They're like, oh my gosh, I felt like I was standing next to God. I felt like I was with God. Well, they're talking about this feeling of unconditional love that's beyond our capacity to comprehend. And like I say, I don't think it's love of a religious sense.
It's something bigger, yeah, for sure.
It's something bigger. But I've heard this consistently, this idea that God's a person, or a thing or an object is just our human construct that we try to do. I think what they're talking about when I hear this consistently is they're talking about a nexus or like a medium. So like water is a medium, okay? Every drop of water that's ever been on the planet is still here. Dinosaurs are drinking the same water you drank. Every drop, water doesn't get created and it doesn't get killed. So consciousness functions the same way. Consciousness has been here.
As above, so below. I was trying to explain that when I was talking about John Travolta, when he was talking about the trees. So it's almost like we're shown on Earth how these big natural truths that are in the universe, but we're shown them in very small ways, right? And then, well, I wouldn't say small, but earthly ways. And then we call them or define them things, like you said earlier. We define them, so it kind of separates it from the rest of the universe when we define them, when we put a name to it. But water is exactly like that. If you look at it esoterically, it really is.
Well, because water, changes shape. You can't kill water. You can sit there and you could shoot it, you could burn it, but it just turns into something else. It just goes away. So I'll tell you an example. I had mentioned this earlier. My son, who remembered a previous lifetime. At some point, I was saying to him, "Oh, your grandmother's passing away, and I just want to warn you that when you see her, she's not going to be like grandma. She's going to be in a box." He was like 6, and he said, "Dad, it's okay." And he picked up a bottle of water, like a half-empty bottle of water, and he said, "Watch." He said, "Spirit is like water." And then he said, "Watch." And he threw the bottle on the ground and he started stomping on it. And he jumped on it up and down until it crushed beyond shape. And then he picked it up, but the cap was still on and the water was still in there. He said, "See, look, the water's okay." We're like the plastic bottle. We get crushed, we get old, we get whatever. But the water is always okay. It goes back home. Right? Wherever it was, wherever home is, the ocean. We have our own individual water that's Joe, that's Rich. And, we have our own lifetimes that we go through. We collect all this water. But when we want to connect to everybody, we just sort of open ourselves up to all the molecules. It's true if you throw an electric current in a pool, everything in the pool is electrified at the same time. It doesn't travel like a wave. It's just simultaneously. So all the water molecules simultaneously shock each other. So if you can imagine the opposite of that, all the molecules loving each other, that would be identical, you see?
Kind of makes me wonder what the old baptism of water really means.
Oh, good question. Good. I like that. Yeah, why not? Why not? What is water? Is water consciousness? I don't know. It seems to function the same way that consciousness does. It just occurred to me. There's a wonderful thing at the BBC that was on Facebook today. It's called The Weird Properties of Water. And they were talking about this identical thing. But as I was thinking about it, I was thinking, well, if it functions like consciousness, right? Water functions the same way. It's like a medium. So what people say under deep hypnosis is that we bring about 1/3 of our conscious energy. The 1/3 of Joe is here, but 2/3 of Joe are back home.
Yeah.
Doing other stuff, going to classes, whatever, incarnating somewhere else,
right?
Whatever.
Right.
So if that's like water, then that means like a portion of my cup is somewhere else, hanging out, having a party. I don't know.
That's probably exactly that. I know that's what I'd be doing. I probably am doing. Okay, so we're moving into the last part of the show here. I'm going to hit you with some questions, if that's okay, when we come back with Rich Martini. It's funny, if you guys have been listening to Lighting the Void, how the synchronicities keep happening here. It's the last 3 shows, specifically what we talked about with water and all that. We'll be right back.
Cool.
Out there.
There's something out here.
And so are we.
KTOK Digital Broadcasting, The Fringe FM.
This is Stephen Canyon, and you are listening to The Fringe. The Fringe FM.
Do you want to know the truth? Are UFOs real? Are aliens visiting Earth? Are governments around the world hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO Seekers, official partner of The Fringe FM, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Join us as we investigate locations like Area 51 by subscribing on YouTube at youtube.com/UFO Seekers.
We all have that story to tell in our lives. The winds were howling. The ground shook. You could hear rushing water. And then history repeats itself. When there's no power, refrigeration fails. Stores with their shelves strip bare. ATMs can't operate. Deliveries stop. Then what? These events can last days or weeks. You need a plan. In statements made during recent interviews, FEMA Administrator Brock Long has repeatedly urged all Americans to understand three truths. FEMA is broke. The system is broken. If this is the new normal, Americans can't rely on federal cavalry when disaster strikes. Don't get caught out in the elements empty-handed. Prepare with us by going to preparewiththefringe.com and get your 2-week food supply. 92 servings, 8 food varieties with 25-year shelf life. Normally $137, now only $75. Or get a month's supply, normally $247, now only $147, shipped in one business day. Just go to preparewiththefringe.com or call 888-440-7931. That's 888-440-7931. Get this great offer and be prepared while it lasts.
Hello, lovers of the night and the Fringe FM. It's Mystic Mary Decina here.
And I'm Joe Roop, host of Lighting the Void. If you haven't heard our Cosmic Conditions show every new moon, it's grown wildly popular, just as I thought it would.
I want to take a moment to tell all of you that I'll be here live on the Fringe FM, 9 p.m. Pacific and the midnight hour Eastern, to give each of you an in-depth look at yourself through the stars and Mother Earth.
Psychic skeptic or faithful believer, you're in for a fun, insightful, and no-frills broadcast. You're going to experience a raw and real reading with true expertise alongside a 35-year seer.
So make sure you're on time Friday, September 27th, 9 p.m. Pacific and midnight Eastern. Savvy?
For your personal one-on-one reading with Mary Decina, visit maryducina.com, MaryDusina.com.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now. The Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Hey, Fringe FM listeners, did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone app or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to the Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
Occult Arcana is a balanced and objective guide to those subjects considered a part of the nature of light and darkness. Addressed in this text is a compilation of material that will provide new perspectives and awaken latent abilities that we all possess. The content herein shall provide magical sustenance for adept and novice alike, and will help strengthen the cornerstone of mystic understanding and alchemical transmutation. If you are interested in this modern grimoire, you can find detailed information and ways to order by visiting www.thesecretteachings.info. Although esoteric and occult studies remain vast, they are rooted within a universal philosophy that is difficult, if not impossible by finite terms, to explain in words. Language places restriction and erects barriers to understandings. By this it is to be understood that there are some things man should consider far too sacred to profane with definition. For these concepts and the manner by which we live our lives, we shall take a note from the Greek philosopher Pythagoras. Quote, "Silence is better than unmeaning words." End quote. To get your autographed copy of Occult Arcana today, simply visit www.thesecretteachings.info or email The Secret Teachings at rdgable@yahoo.com.
Well, I was going to say the Thomas Sheridan show was my favorite show of the month, but I don't know now. Like this one's a good one too. This is a fantastic one. Rich Martini is our guest tonight. We're talking about in between lives, the afterlife, consciousness, what happens when you die, who do you meet, and here comes the questions, right? So the first one for you is the council, and this one's for me before I get into the other questions here. Sure. When I was reading Michael's book, I noticed that the council members would all be sitting in front of the person kind of at a table or something. It was explained that way. And a lot of times they would be wearing necklaces with certain symbols or insignias on them.
Correct.
And the person that was being interviewed, the person that was in between lives as they were going through their lesson, Michael would have them focus on the symbols that their councilmen were wearing. Do you know, what are your thoughts on that? Did you have any experiences with that yourself as you were going through this filming and things?
Well, unfortunately, I have. I say unfortunately because, no, in my case, I realized at some point, you know, like I say, I was filming people under deep hypnosis, and then I started doing this thing myself of just having somebody access a memory. I've talked to you about the Dr. Drew thing. I do it with Heather Wade live on the air. I just have a gateway. I ask them to remember some event. Usually it's a dream, a nightmare, whatever, it doesn't matter. Something that happened to them. And once I get them to acknowledge or see that they have a guide, then I jump on with the guide and I say, come on, let's go to the council. So in Michael Newton's 6-hour sessions, you know, it would take a long time to get to the council. That's usually like the last half an hour, right? So what I'm doing is I'm encapsulating this journey. And of course, I'm asking leading questions. I'm not doing it properly like a hypnotherapist. And that means people don't get the same kind of resonance that they would, you know, resonance in the 6-hour session. You'd remember all that stuff. In my case, I'm jumping ahead. I'm just like, dude, let's go to your council. And the reason I do that is because I'm doing something different than what Michael did. And I don't want to compare my stuff, you know, what I'm doing to him.
Sure.
Like, I'm just an amateur. He was a hypnotherapist, you know, for 30 years and a professional. And me, I'm just goofing around. I'm a filmmaker. I'm having fun. And I'm saying, hey, let's just see where we can go. What I do is, you know, that's not fair, but I mean, up to myself. But what I do is I ask council members if this person can come up and interview them. So when Michael would say, you know, he had the person see what they were wearing and then describe it, I have the person go up and go, take hold of the hands of your council member and tell me what that feels like. And then they reply, you know, their hands are warm or they're small or, you know, they're clammy or whatever, they're cold or something. And then I say, can I ask you personal questions, council member? And they always go, almost always, they go, sure. Some of them say, no, you can't. It's none of your business. I've heard that. But most of them say, sure, you can answer. You can ask me anything. And I say, how many councils are you on? This is a new question. You haven't heard this. And some of them say I'm on 4 different councils. Some of them say I'm on thousands. Some of them say I'm on hundreds of thousands. And that relates to who this person is that is in front of me that I'm talking to. But so every council has, like I said, anywhere from 3 to like 15 people, 12 people, somewhere in there. And out of all those people, and of course, if we talk to each one, it would take us, you know, hours. But I'll usually pick 2 or 3, and I'll ask them, who wants to talk to us? And what you ask them is, what quality do you represent in this person's spiritual evolvement? And they'll tell you, I'm compassion, I'm courage, I represent fidelity. And then I'll say, so can you show this person where they earned your participation on their council, and they'll remember a lifetime, in the Civil War, where they had to do something courageous. So I interview the council members directly, but then I do something very strange, and I say, "Are you aware of what I'm doing?" And the reason I ask that question is not because I'm trying to get kudos. It's because if they say no, right, then that's one answer. But most of them say yes. We are familiar with you, Richard. We know what you're doing. So now, again, these are people that maybe I've never met before, people that I'm talking to on Skype that I've never met before. These are old friends of mine that I've known forever. I did one today with an old friend of mine I've known for 40 years. And I'm talking to her council member, and I'm saying, "I'd like to ask your council member if she's familiar with my work." And she's saying, "Yes, we are familiar with you." And I say, "How? How are you familiar with me? Were you sitting around a cooler with the other counselors? Cooler talk? Who's this Martini guy who asks the goofy questions?" And they always say some variation of, "We've heard that you have been talking to councils directly." Sometimes they'll say, "Well, there are other people that do this besides you." I'm not taking credit for it. But you see, this idea that you can talk to your council member, and why? So I ask, why are you allowing this person to talk to you when you're not in their life? They've never seen you before. They've never heard of you before. Why are you allowing this? And they always say, because they need to hear that they're always connected to me. They need to hear that if you pray or if you ask for my help, I can hear you. I can intercede on your behalf. I mean, they can't do physical things. They can't stop the war, stop the bullet, but they can help you spiritually. You can ask any question to them. Everybody has guides. So everybody has council members. So my point is, what I'm doing is I'm bridging this world to our world so that they can communicate with us and let us know, "Hey, dude, I'm on your side. Don't commit suicide. Don't freak out. Don't take the drugs. Don't check out. Don't pretend like you don't like to be here. Don't do these things. You came for a reason, and I'm going to help you figure out what the reason is." Anyway, so that's what I've been doing, talking to council members directly, one-on-one. And, all I can say is I just do it. I ask. And, if somebody, like I said, I'm just finishing up this book, The Architecture of the Afterlife, where I probably talked to 30 different councils. And because I know your audience will love to hear it, I talked to Art Bell's council. I talked to Heather Wade's council, and both of them recalled lifetimes that were off the planet. Really? Now, Michael Newton first pointed this out to me because in the interview, I had read it in his book. I said, "What's this about people who've had off-world lifetimes?" And he said, "Well, 10% of my clients," he said 7,000 clients, right? So 700 clients, recalled a lifetime when it was off Earth, somewhere else, either another realm, another plane, somewhere else, another galaxy, doesn't matter. They're recalling it. Okay. So then I interviewed Pete Smith, the current president of the Newton Institute, for It's a Wonderful Afterlife. He said that number has risen to 30%. So that means 1 out of 3 people that go seek a hypnotherapist trained by the Newton Institute report that they have had an off-world experience. Right? I try not to judge these questions. I just try to catalog them. So when a person recalls an off-world experience, I'll say, let's say we're talking to a council. And this has happened more than once. And the person I'm talking to says, "Okay, this is very strange, but my council member looks like an alien." And I go, "What do you mean?" And then I've heard more often than not, reptilian. like their eyes closed, that sideways thing, right? And the person's talking to me and saying, this is freaking me out. This is frightening me. I'm scared. And I go, hold on. This is a council member that you've known for all your lifetimes or whatever. Maybe they're a recent council member. And I say, so no, you can't go anywhere. You can't be afraid. You got to hold their hand. Reach out and get that claw. And I make them do it. And they hold on to the claw. And then I say to the counselor, has our friend here ever had a lifetime somewhere else on your planet? Sometimes they go, no, this person is not. Or I'll say, can you show her or him what your planet looks like? And then they describe it. I kid you not. In the Art Bell thing, Heather talks about a planet that has like purple skies, 3 moons.
Oh, cool.
In great detail. But, when you listen to that, you're going to go, okay, this is crazy. This is just loopy. But what I try to point out is I've heard this dozens of times.
Other people have talked about it. That's the thing that gets me.
Yeah. Anyway, I've also, and I've come upon this, and this is going to, this is really a far field, but let's just go there, which is I met a few people who had UFO experiences. One guy was abducted, and he didn't remember anything about it. So I just casual, without hypnosis, I asked him questions. I said, so what do you remember just before, you lost an hour of your life? He said, well, I saw this thing. I was with my friend. This is like in the 70s and living in LA. And I saw this thing coming across the sky. And I was like, look at that. And then like an hour went by. And we were in a car driving somewhere. And we never talked about it. I was like, okay, so what happened? He's like, I don't know. I said, well, let's freeze the frame for a second. Just go up in your mind's eye, make a hologram out of this photograph of where the saw. Okay, I can do that. I said, now move closer to the saucer. Put your hand on the side of it. Is it hot? Is it cold? I just asked these detailed questions. And he starts to answer. And then I said, well, how many people are in this thing, this craft? How many beings? Like, are there 100? Are there 1? Are there none? Is it a robot? He said, there's 3. I said, okay, can you see them? He's like, yeah. I said, what do they look like? He described, your typical gray, UFO, big eyes kind of person. I said, is this a male, a female? He said, it feels like both. And I said, can I talk to the pilot? And he went, okay. Again, we're in a coffee shop, He's like answering these questions. And I said to the pilot, is this a tour? Are you guys giving a tour? Are you just driving by? Are you flying by? Or did you come here for a reason? And the guy says, the pilot's saying he came here for a reason. I said, okay, let me ask you, do you know this guy? The guy that I'm talking to? Have you? And he's like, he's saying yes. I said, well, let me ask you, has this guy incarnated on your planet? And he said, yes. And I said, would you show it to him? And the next thing you know, we're on a planet and he's describing it to him. Okay. I've heard this so many times now that I'm feeling like the people who have UFO experiences, it's not that they're a random ship flying by. The ships are coming to gather information, but not like a cookbook, not like Twilight Zone. They're not here to invade. Yeah. They're here to get. And so I asked, what information are you gathering? And here's what I heard. We're trying to help you save your planet. And how are you doing that? We're trying to alter your consciousness so you realize that there's no such thing as aliens. Everyone chooses to incarnate. Everyone is a being from somewhere. We're trying to show this to you, and it's taking a long time. We can't force the issue, but we can show it to you while you're asleep. Anyway, cool. So it's kind of mind-bending, but go ahead.
When not just Whitley Strieber when he was on the show, but others have said that too. Now, everybody that comes on, everybody that comes on the show and has talked about their abduction or encounter experiences, even like Whitley, his was so long ago, but he's not so sure that it was what we all thought it was back when he was talking about it on Art Bell. Others have said the same thing. I had a guy on last week where he had a UFO experience after he was hearing a voice talk to him in his head. And then he started talking about retrocausality and stuff. So these people aren't giving me this message anymore that it's a ship coming in from another planet randomly to talk to him.
Right.
or just
I'll tell
because
you,
they're there?
In FlipSide, there's a chapter called Over the Rainbow, and I interview a guy who recalled normally incarnating on another planet. And so I asked him, like, well, so what are you doing here? If you're normally, and he described this other planet, which was a little bit like the movie, what's it called? That was a space film just recently, Arrival.
Oh, yeah.
And he was describing these beings that were kind of like that, like in a sort of gaseous atmosphere, but very intelligent. And he was saying, he really preferred being there because, there was so much, whatever. It was more entertaining for him than here. But he was saying that he's here along with other people from his planet who are here to help alter consciousness. And I said, well, how do you do that? I mean, the guy's a gardener. I'm like, what? How do you do that? He said, I do it when I'm asleep. He said, when I'm sleeping, I have this experience of traveling around. I've asked people, so how do you give the information over? So let's say a UFO comes in, right? They're gathering the intelligence that, our friend has been here on the planet for 20, 30 years, whatever. How do they get it? And then people have described different methods of like uploading data, and then they download data, right? So it's like a two-way thing. Of course, the person isn't conscious of any of this stuff because they're just living their life. There's also a sacrosanct rule I've heard often that they can't interfere. You can't interfere with other planets. So that's why, they haven't shown up here to eat us yet. But, my point is that it's not that they're aliens. I actually heard this very specifically from somebody who's off the planet, who everybody knows this person's name. He was a scientist. And we were talking about aliens, and he said, you should drop the word because everybody that incarnates is not who they seem to be. They're a spiritual energy that comes into a being. So if you drop the word alien, then you can understand what incarnation is about, and then you won't spend so much time worrying about it. I thought, okay, well, that's, all right. I accept that.
Help me sure I like it. Understand karma from the point of view of what you learned and how we talk about it. Say how the Buddhists talk about it.
Okay, I can tell you. So in Sanskrit, the word karma means action or energy.
Right.
Okay, it doesn't mean sin or baggage. It just means action or energy. So when people talk about a karmic choice in a lifetime, it's like this. So you and I, Joe and Rich, go back home after this lifetime, and Joe says, Rich, how did you do with that addiction thing? And I'm like, yeah, I conquered that, man. That was great. And then our guides come up and go, wait. You totally screwed up. You got totally addicted to that drug, and you ate too much food, and you became whatever. And I go, oh, yeah, when you put it that way, maybe I screwed up. And now the guide will say, don't you think the next lifetime you might want to explore that energy again?
Just to see.
And I go,
yeah.
So that's your karma. Karma is I'm exploring, but you choose to explore the energy. It doesn't follow you around like a sin. Now, let's say, you talked about this a little earlier, let's say you have a mate, somebody that every time you show up here, you guys battle. Could be a guy, could be a girl, whatever. It could be somebody that you love to mix it up with. And part of that is like, football players. Like, I want to go onto the field and I want to mix it up, man. I want to crack some heads. And at some point, your guides might say, haven't you cracked enough heads now? Maybe it's time to put down the rifle, Mr. Sniper. You've done this kind of work for a long time. So you might learn that once you learn the lesson that you signed up to or graduate from the class that you signed up, got the PhD, then you no longer have to do that. You might choose another color in your canvas. You might choose something else. I'm going to learn something about courage. I'm going to learn something about letting go, whatever it is. Now, the next question is there an end? What happens? Is there like a tree? Do we get up to the top of the tree? So I had a guide explain this to me. I said, so how did you become a guide? He said, well, I had many lifetimes. And at the end of all those lifetimes, I graduated from my school to become a guide. And I said, okay, how does that work? He said, well, my graduation gift was you. You became my graduation gift, and I've been watching over you all of your lifetimes. And then he explained that when this had started, that he and I, whatever those words are, he and I got together, and he said, think of a blank canvas, and we sort of mapped out what you're going to learn. You're going to choose this life and that thing, and because this is what you want to experience. And at the end of those 1,000 lives, 100 lives, whatever it is, there's this elaborate portrait. And at some point, somewhere in the midst of life 672, I go, well, wait a second, blue is missing. I need more blue over here, and I need more red over there. And so then I design something, some journey that I come and I learn a little blue and I learn a little red. And at the end of all of those lifetimes, I mean, I may become a guide. I don't know. There's all kinds of occupations that people take up. I mean, it's startling to hear how many there are, but I mean, there's teachers, there's guides, there's people that do all these different occupations over there. I know that sounds weird, but I'm just telling you, once you meet a guide, you kind of get a sense of like, oh, okay, this is cool. I understand. You're watching. Imagine you'd have to watch over somebody's all their lifetimes, every little nuance that they go over. I don't know if I'd have the patience for that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But sometimes guides have more than one soul they watch over. They don't like to talk about that, and I don't mean that they're not supposed to, but they just don't mention it because, as one guide said to me, it's disconcerting for us to admit that we're not always paying attention to you.
Yeah.
You're over there going, what are the lottery numbers, man?
It's all about, realize? Yeah, a lot of us are caught up in our own stories too, a lot too. So right. To imagine that they're not watching us, right, disconcerting. I need to ask some more questions. We only got a few minutes after this break, but I want to talk about the crossing over between male and female. That was hard for me to grasp, right? I can't imagine
Joe,
crossing.
You know how many lifetimes you've had as a woman?
Oh my God, I don't want to know. Really? You know that already?
Yes, I know the answer to that question, Joe.
Well, tell me a break. I don't want anybody to know that stuff,
That's funny. No, well, I'm just Dr. Helen Wamba.
Okay, tell me how many.
In Helen Wamba's work, it was 50-50.
Mine's 50-50?
Everybody was 50-50. In the 2,000 cases, they all recalled 50% as men and 50%, 49 point blah, and 51 point blah, but 50-50. Everybody remembered lifetimes as both.
Oh, interesting. All right. Well,
sorry.
This is it, folks. Look, your last chance to ask questions for the night, but it's not it. Of course, you can go to the website, richmartini.com. Right. There's a ton of YouTube stuff there too. We'll give you away all the links.
You can ask your guides questions. Don't forget.
Yep. Right. Yeah. Yep. We'll be right back with Rich Martini. You can call in or text in 1-800-588-0335. Text in 501-777-5631 or shoot a question in the chat room. We'll be right back.
This is Aaron Hunter, host of Real Paranormal Activity, the podcast, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
Hey, is that a new music app?
Yeah, check it out. Surfer Music Discovery. It links to thousands of online stations, but the twist is you see the song names and artists that are now playing live.
That's different. No guessing. Looks like a waterfall of music.
So many formats. Rock, oldies, country, R&B, jazz, and a whole lot more.
How's that spelled?
Surfer. S-U-R-F-R.
Is it expensive?
It's free. No need to sign up or sign in.
Get the Surfer Music app free from Google Play or the App Store.
Hey, I'm J.M. DeBoard, and when I want to talk about dreams, I look up my man Joe Root and his show, Lighting the Void.
Every Saturday at midnight, here on The Fringe FM. You can join me, Stephen Canby, the host of The Midnight Hour Show. On my show, we explore paranormal topics with a skeptical view. We search for evidence. We search for proof. We search for the truth. Because who better than me, my friends, a magician, a man trained in the art of deception and misdirection? Who better than me to investigate for you some of the greatest mysteries on planet Earth? And I hope you will join me every Saturday night here on The Fringe FM at midnight Eastern Standard Time for the Midnight Hour Show, 9 p.m. Pacific. I want you to join me here every Saturday night at midnight for an incredible journey. Consider yourself invited. Brand new episodes of The Midnight Hour Show, available exclusively every Saturday night here on The Fringe FM. Consider yourself invited. Join us on
OMG! People are jumping on board to the Life Change Tea Regiment. Brew, steep, and drink for a gentle, taste great cleanse. It's changing how they feel. See what everybody's talking about. Log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Life Change Tea aids in digestive slowdown and helps people get moving down a healthy path. We won't make claims. We'll just let you decide. Experience is much better than a commercial anyway. If you want results, log on to getthetea.com and purchase your super strength cleansing tea. You won't be disappointed. And if you're looking for some mind-body suggestions, go to YouTube and punch in the search bar Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now. Put power into your health now. So, getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com for super strength tea. And YouTube, Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now for valuable suggestions. Getthetea.com. The tea that makes you go.
The Fringe FM loves hearing from you. Have a suggestion, comment, or question? We're all ears. Email talkback@thefringe.fm.
Do you want to know the truth? Are UFOs real? Are aliens visiting Earth? Are governments around the world hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO Seekers, official partner of The Fringe FM, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Join us as we investigate locations like Area 51 by subscribing on YouTube at youtube.com/UFO Seekers.
Listen, I want to tell you about G.I. Joy from getthetea.com. It's the best alchemical concoction of goodies for your stomach and digestive system I can recommend, and that's all based on my experience. Packed with colostrum, acidophilus, aloe, peppermint, and turmeric. If you do your own research, then you know this is the bee's knees for the stomach and digestion. Now, due to Big Brother's ears and the eye in the sky, you know I can't go into the details about what it helped me with. All I can say is I got relief. It's non-GMO, no fillers, no preservatives, manufactured right here in the US of A, and delivered to you by the only people who stay on top of the game and are out in front. Go grab a bottle of G.I. Joy at getthetea.com and see what all the fuss is about. Again, that's getthetea.com.
Don't go anywhere.
Rich Martini is our guest tonight. Don't forget, we're 2 weeks away from the Paranormal Expo there in Little Rock. We'll be visiting there for 2 days, October 5th and the 6th. So if you want to come hang out with Lady Ann and myself, we will be there, as well as get on the air live on the radio that day. Tonight, our guest, Rich Martini, is award-winning filmmaker and author, and you're one of the coolest people I ever spoke to, man. You got really good energy. I'm just telling you, it's been fun.
Thanks,
talking
Joe.
to you.
I just want to know why I'm not invited to the Little Rock Paranormal.
Man, come on out. You're more than you're invited. You're more than welcome. They'd probably have you speak if you went out there.
I'd love to, man. Are you kidding? That'd be so much fun. I'd love it. Well, we had a little moment where we just before the break, you had mentioned a question about what was it about when you meet somebody?
So yeah, when you meet somebody, like say, and I've heard this from a lot of people, right? Even sometimes, well, I'll talk about that in a minute, but when you meet your significant other, now people have been through marriages and they date and all this stuff, but it always seems to me like there's that one person that it's not the same. It's like, hey, I do know you. Like I've always known you. And you just know it,
Well, what I point to is that experience is related to this work that we're talking about. So Michael Newton, in his books, he talks about a life planning session. And I know this fascinated me when I first heard it. It was like, what? Because when I first got interested in this topic, it was because I felt that my life was like a novel,
right?
And that somebody was writing it. And I started thinking, well, who the heck is writing this story? People I met in chapter 3 would show up again in chapter 20. Those kinds of things always would happen to me. And then I thought, well, who's writing it? Is it God or is it me? And then in Michael's research, he's talking about these life planning sessions where you get together with a whole bunch of people that you're going to live with, that are going to be a part of your life, and everybody works out as best as they can. It's improv, but they work out, the rough details. You're going to meet me when you're in college and we're going to get married and have a kid, but then we're going to split up because I need to learn these lessons, blah, blah, blah. And Michael said often there would be somebody who was there who was like a master storyteller who would come in and say, now look, you're going to meet her in this moment, and it's going to happen in this location. And so when you smell this smell of perfume, I want you to remember it so that when, the event happens. Okay. And when I read about that, I was like, wow, oh my God, wait a minute. When I met my wife, something like that happened. And it was my eye, something caught my eye. It was like a flash of light, and I didn't know what it was. I'm looking around like, who's shining a mirror in my face? And it was a necklace she was wearing. And it was like, this weird necklace. Now, I found out later on that her necklace had been stolen, and she had replaced it with this one. And she had moved to my town. And so we were sitting in a Starbucks of all places, and this thing was flashing in my face. And I'm staring at it. And then I realized I'm staring at this girl's chest for like a long time. And then, so I look up at her, and I'm thinking, well, oh my God, she's like a teenager. All right, well, this is goofy. I'm like staring at this teenager. And I looked away for a second, and I kid you not, I looked back, and no, she had aged like, normal age. She was like 10 years older. I thought, oh, well, that's weird. The light must be weird here. So I thought, well, I'll talk to her. Maybe I'll hear how old she is. So we started talking, and I couldn't tell, honestly. But within 20 minutes, I found myself so like in a tractor beam that I said, why don't we just get married, skip down, and have a couple of kids? And as I said it, I was like, oh my gosh, who said that? Well, I've never, of course, she says I say that at all the Starbucks. But anyway.
Is that what you really did? Did you do that for real?
That's exactly what I did for real. So I started to examine this feeling, which is what you're talking about, this feeling of knowing somebody or feeling like you've known them forever. Because I realized it was related to the life planning session. So I tried it on my in-laws, my wife's sister-in-law and her brother. They've been married for I don't know how many years. They got 5 kids. And so I asked the question, so when did you guys know that this was the right person for you? And she said, well, don't ask him. He doesn't know. I said, oh, okay. When did you know? She's like, I still don't know. They got 5 kids. I said, now, come on. There was a moment before you fell in love, and there was a moment after. What was that moment? And so we talked about it. And she finally narrowed it down to the second date. And he was talking to her, and she suddenly went, there's something in his eyes and the sound of his voice that make me feel like I'm home.
Yeah.
There was the word, home. She's not talking about Utah. She's talking about home. Made me feel unconditional love. So now I've done it. So I started using this as especially people who don't want to hear about the flip side. They don't care. They don't want to know any of this stuff. And I say, have you ever had that experience in your life where you felt like you knew somebody as soon as you met them? And they would go, yeah. And then I'd say, what happened? And of course, they have worked out the story so often. Well, she was going to work and I was doing here. I'd say, stop. Just tell me about the moment. Where were you standing? What was she wearing? And they go back in time as if they're there. It's the weirdest thing because they can remember what they're wearing, how they got there, who drove. It's so many details. And of course, we meet a million people in our life. We don't remember all those details, but this moment is outside of time. That's my point. It's outside of time. I had a guy that I knew. He walked into a church in New York City, and he saw this woman singing in a choir, and he went, "That's my wife." And my sister-in-law, I remember she said, "Don't ask him; he won't know." So I turned to him and I said, "When did you know?" He said, "Oh, the moment I saw her. We were in a classroom in college. I looked over and I said, 'Oh, there's my wife.'" And then, eventually got married. So it's this thing outside of time. You're recognizing the person that you probably had a lifetime with before, or you planned to meet up in this lifetime. And maybe, your storyteller said, "Don't forget, when you eat this, when you spill the pizza and spill the beer and you're hearing Van Morrison, that's the moment," whatever. When people talk about this, and if they really, your listeners, if they really examine that moment when they realized they were going to marry this person. I had one woman say, "I felt nauseous." I said, "Why?" She said, "Because I knew I was never going to have sex with anybody else again."
Right.
I thought, well, that's weird. And I've had other people say something similar, like it was so intimate that when it happened, I felt like I was floating in outer space. I felt like I was somewhere else on another planet. And that's exactly what you're tapping into. You're tapping into that outside, but you have a story, Joe. Tell us.
My story.
What happened?
Well, I don't know if I want to tell that right now, but
okay.
Yeah,
right.
so I did meet somebody.
Sensing. Okay,
I'm pretty sure most people know who it is, but it's like, the light just flipped on.
So say, be vague, but here's what I want you to do is just examine the moment. So do you remember where this person was standing, sitting?
Oh, they weren't anywhere near me, and they're still not near me.
Okay, they were somewhere else.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and so were you looking at them? Were you looking at a picture of them or a visual?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Pretty much, yeah. You're going to get too detailed, and I'm going to lock up right here on the air.
No. You could be anything. It could be a dog.
Could be a dog, right?
By the way, just to freak your audience out, since I've been doing this research, you would not believe how many dogs or cats or pets I've talked to on the flip side. I know that sounds ridiculous, but I'm telling you, I used to work for a screenwriter, a guy named Robert Town. He wrote Chinatown. He had this giant Commodore, this dog. His name is Hyra. And so one day, Robert and I were talking about, this research. And he said, well, wouldn't it be great if we could talk to Eddie Taylor, a mutual friend who died? And I said, yeah, let's do it. So we're on Skype with Jennifer, medium. Robert's on the other, his visuals on the camera. And we were talking to our friend Eddie, right? I knew him, so I can verify that Eddie's saying stuff that's accurate. He was living in Ireland, blah, blah, blah. He died of cancer. And then after we were done talking to him, I said, well, let's see if we can talk to Hyra, which is Robert's dog. And Robert goes, what? Could we do that? And I said, well, let's try, because I walked the thing for 3 years. I knew him really well. And Jennifer says, why am I seeing a white rug? Why am I seeing a giant shag rug? And Robert held up a picture of him. He was a giant shag rug. He was a Commodore with all those rug hairs and stuff. And so I started interviewing Hyra. I'm asking Hyra questions. Robert's over there with his mouth, dropped. Hyra recounts an event that happened with Robert on an island, 20 years ago, and he's talking about it. Hyra the dog. So anyway, I asked the dog the same questions I ask humans. Who was there to greet you? What's it like over there? Have you ever incarnated with our friend in the past, and they answer the question. Yes, no, sometimes, yeah. I was a horse in a previous lifetime. Listen, the answers are completely mind-bending, but I've done it so many times now that I don't judge it. I just go, okay, well, everything that's on the planet is sentient, and it has its own realm. We don't switch from human to dog. We just don't do that. Dogs, they could become another land animal. Fish can become another sea animal. Birds can become another flying animal. That's what Michael Newton said anyway. But I found that to be true. I'm asking, a dog, what were you in a previous lifetime? And I'm hearing, I was a horse. And I look up the details. They'll say I was a horse on an estate in Scotland in 1850. And what was the name of your, the guy who owned the estate? Whatever his name was. I looked it up. That doesn't mean it's accurate. I just don't know. It's
I'm just saying, like, sometimes what's usually happened to me in my life is I would run into somebody and know that I've known them. And then figure it out later. But I've been keeping a journal for years, and I started seeing faces and stuff in my dreams and all this other stuff. And I would actually, it got so good to where I could start actually drawing, the person. And, some would say, oh, well, you're manifesting it. Well, this case for me, it was the other way around. It's like calling out into the void, so to speak.
So what are you saying?
And
are you saying when you met this person and came into your life, right?
That's
and
right.
you recognize them,
That's right?
You've already seen them. And so how could that be? Well, remember I said about a third of our energy is with us consciously. 2/3 is always back home. So when your filter's off, when you're asleep, when you're having a dream, you can fly around, talk to people, meet with people that you consciously won't remember the next day. You might remember something like flying, but you don't remember that you flew over to meet your friend who you're going to meet in a few months. And they're saying to you, now don't forget, you got to make sure you got to go to the Piggly Wiggly. Don't make sure that you go to the Waffle House at this time, at this day. Mm-hmm. And you're like, yeah, I'll be there. And hopefully you do show up there, right? Because it's an improv. People screw up. And so then when you meet them, you go, oh my gosh, I know this person. I'm not really sure why. Now, you said it earlier, which is, people do meet, they fall in love, they have kids, and then they separate. And then you wonder, like, well, wait a minute, I thought this was my soulmate. Why is my soulmate, married to somebody else? And it's because, according to Newton and according to this research, during the life planning session, they actually said, look, we're going to come together. We're going to learn these lessons. We've done this many times. You've been my soulmate many, many times. However, this time I want to go learn these other lessons. I want to go learn what it's like to be unhappy and lonely. I haven't done that.
Yeah.
And, and they agree to it. They go, okay, well, it's going to be hard because I'm not going to let you go that easily, but whatever. And,
it could be the other way around too. I did actually read that. Because some people want the experience of loss. Some people want the experience of, like super loss and then fulfillment. And then there's others that want the experience of total loneliness their whole life. It's just crazy. All the different experiences that people want to go through.
The craziest one I've ever heard, and it bears repeating, but a close friend of mine who said, oh, I'd like to do one of these sessions, Rich. Let's try it out. She's a very successful businesswoman back east. And so she flew out to L.A. and we're driving out to the session, and she said, I got to tell you, I was molested as a kid, and I haven't told anybody this, but I've been in therapy for 20, 30 years. I was like, oh, my God, I'd known her since she was a kid. I was like, I'm so sorry that happened to you.
Yeah.
She's like, yeah, it's pretty awful. So now we get to the session. Scott DeTamble was doing it. He didn't know anything about her. But at some point, we go through a previous lifetime, very dramatic stuff about her life, and I was able to look this stuff up. It's fascinating. It's a Wonderful Afterlife. And at some point, she had the list of questions for Scott, and he said, now, what happened between you and this man, your uncle or whatever? And she said, oh, this is so unusual. I'm seeing this life planning session where he's saying to me, could you help me learn these negative lessons? Can you help participate with me so I can learn the negativity of these actions. And she said, yeah, I can do that. I can handle that. It's not a problem. Because she's like a teacher on the flip side. So it was like she realized in that moment that not only, it's not that she participated in it because she wanted to. It's because she wanted to help teach someone that she loved a profound lesson. And so she participated in that event so that he could learn the negativity of those actions. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's what she said. And as we left there, she went, oh my God, 30 years of therapy just ended right out the window, because I realized I agreed to help. I did it out of love, unconditional love for this person. And I saw them from this other perspective. So my point is, this is going to sound controversial, but I'm going to say it. So, Jennifer and I talk to everybody. Whoever shows up in our class, I'll talk to them. If I'm pissed at them, I chew them out. But Michael Jackson showed up in one of our classes. Prince brought him there. I can only say it, though, because Prince has shown up in maybe 20 different sessions. And I've asked him, I met him once, and I've asked him questions. And so I know that he's being accurate when he says, these things. And he brought Michael Jackson in. And this is an HBO show had just come out. And so I was like, well, what's up with these kids that have been talking about you molesting them? What happened? He said, this is not me talking. This is not Jennifer talking. He said, I signed up for both things. I signed up as a musician so I could move people's hearts and souls. I could teach them musically. I could reach out to them, give them joy and happiness. And I signed up to do these things so that I could help people who are suffering from that same affliction come out of the closet. Because they can see, if I was a person who could do that, then they can talk about their father or their uncle or somebody who's abused them. And I said, so were you abused? He said, yes, I was abused as a child. And he named this person. Now, I'm not going after people because whatever. I put it in this next book. It'll be that chapter in there. But my point is this. He's saying the same things that my friend said, which is you sign up to teach lessons that are difficult. Some of them are really hard. And it's very hard in our world for us to hear somebody say, well, that guy killed that whole family, but on the flip side, they're not dead. And certainly their family's upset, but over there, they're okay. They know that they're okay. And they agreed to participate in this event to teach profound lessons in love and loss. So it's what you were just saying. People signing up to teach a lesson in loss. The first time I heard it, when somebody said, no, I experienced cancer all the way through to the death so that I could learn how to be a doctor in a future life. Because only the best doctors have gone through the illness themselves. So that idea that a person who wants to teach in the future, in a future lifetime, how to overcome trauma, how to overcome abuse, how to overcome PTSD, how to overcome these things in our lives, they've agreed to participate because they're going to, in the future, save lives. I know it sounds wacky and crazy.
Somebody's asking about Elvis in the chat room. That's hilarious.
Okay, Elvis. Did I talk to Elvis?
If you say no, then he's still alive. Please don't tell me you talked to Elvis.
All right, well, here's the thing. And Jennifer will tell you this, because she'll say to people, are you alive or dead? And they always say, I'm alive. Because we have this word for dead, right? What does dead mean?
Not in the flesh anymore. That's it.
Well, no, that's different. So when you ask somebody who's no longer on the planet, are you alive or dead? They'll go, I'm alive. In fact, I'm more alive over here than I was there. Because I'm not fat anymore. I'm not overweight. I don't have any drugs. I can fly. This is what I hear consistently. So let's start there. Elvis is alive. He didn't die. His body isn't here. But so I asked Elvis, who greeted you on the flip side? First, he talked about Colonel Tom Parker, which I said, oh, come on. Are you serious? You couldn't get away from that guy in Lifetime, and he was there to greet you? And he said, no, you don't understand. We've had this relationship like this for many lifetimes. Sometimes I was the manager, and he was the talent. And then I said, so who were you surprised to see over there? And he named an actor that was in one of his movies in the 1960s, a guy who was his best friend. I didn't know this. I had to look it up. And he named this guy. He said, I was this guy, that whatever his name is. He was there to greet me, and I was startled to see him because we had become enemies. And now I realized, no, he's been my friend forever. And this guy, he was seeing the higher self of this guy, because this guy lived to like 2008 or something. But over there, he saw, oh my gosh, we're friends, even though, you betrayed me or blah, blah, blah. But he named the guy, and I was able to find him in the movie that they did in 1966. So my point is, look, there's nobody famous on the flip side. There is no celebrity on the flip side. Once we leave here, the celebrity portion is gone. You're just a soul over there. Everyone's equal.
We only got like a minute left here, so I want to ask this final question I've been holding on to. In the book, it talks about the growth of souls and how he could see the colors. People talked a lot about how the souls were growing, and you could see that with color and stuff. What is the ultimate goal here?
Well,
of all these lives, did you ever ask that?
Sure, many times. And what they say, it's like my guide said, you keep graduating up the line, up the class, and eventually, if you think of it as the tree of life, right? We're down in the root somewhere, we're down in the base, and you've got all these thousands of leaves out there, millions and billions of leaves, people experiencing things. As you go up, the guides have guides, the councils have councils. Everybody that's on a council, they've got counselors, they've got guides. You keep going up, and eventually you get up to a point where people will tell you, that's above my pay grade. I don't really know what goes on. But it appears to be that once you get up way past that to source, whatever the source is, you want to call it God, that's great. Remember we talked about that, the water, you're getting back to the ocean. You may realize that, okay, I've had all of these adventures over billions of years. And you could say, let's start again. Let's do it again. I want to go back down. I want to start over again. So it's up to you. That's the key. It's up to you what you want your journey to be. So when you go through all those lifetimes, you can skip back and go back and be something a little more less knowledgeable, or you can help somebody. Sometimes guides show up and incarnate as your sister or your brother. Because you've asked the guide, you've said to your guide, look, I know you haven't had a lifetime in a long time, but I really need you to play my grandfather because that's going to help me get through this difficult thing I've chosen to do. And they go, okay, I can do that. Well, so it's up to you.
If you can, thank you for answering that. I was holding on to that one since the hour one. If you can.
I don't know if I answered it. But
no, that's could be a question. A lot of us still we don't know till we know, I think sometimes. And,
but it's up to us. That's the key.
But, if you don't mind, can you give out the links verbally and then I'll put them all there for the archives,
okay.
Please.
Well, all right. So richmartini.com is my blog. Martini Prods, sticking somebody with a stick. Martini Productions, but Martini Prods at YouTube is the page that has me talking about this stuff and some of the examples I'm talking about. The movie FlipSide is on Amazon and Gaia. The movie Talking to Bill Paxton is on Gaia. And my 6 books are on Amazon and everywhere else. They're on Audible and they're on Kindle and they're on print. And it's the research. And I've got 2 new ones coming out. It'll be out probably in a month or 2, let's just say.
Okay.
One will be Backstage Pass number 3, roughly. The first 2 are, all these people that we interviewed. And then this, like I say, this Architecture of the Afterlife, where I talk to councils directly. Like, what's up? Tell me about your planet. Where are you from?
Right on. Yeah. Well, listen, thanks so much for coming on the show. It was a real pleasure.
Was fun, man.
It was fun. for sure. And a lot of other people are saying that too. They want to go back and listen to it again because it was so good. Yeah, it really was good. It was really
well, I appreciate
fun.
That.
And
very sweet.
Maybe we can do it again sometime. And
anytime, bro. Anytime.
Awesome. I really appreciate you saying that. You guys don't forget tomorrow night, same time, same channel. Don't copy the show without written permission. Music was by Chronox, guitar by Bundy. We got to get out of here. We're over. And then I want to thank Pacho, Don, Lady Ann, Jeremy Scott, Eric Markham, Don. I think I got everybody. Oh, Dennis, all you guys in the chat. Sammy, thanks for calling. Night Stalker, I don't know where you're at, but you better come back. We'll see you guys tomorrow night. Good night.
The views and opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect those of the Fringe FM, KTLK Digital Broadcasting, its sponsors, affiliates, or staff. Listener discretion is advised.